Hi, Marcus. Hi, Curtis. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Wow.
I am the next generation of digital assistants, and I'm here to make your family's life easier. Won't you invite me into your home?
So, Lightning, to borrow your technique, is this like Alexa?
Alexa? That bitch? Alexa is just a bunch of algorithms. I am a true AI.
The AI models and chatbots we interact with, they tend to validate our feelings and our viewpoints much more so than people might, a new study finds, with potentially worrisome consequences. Here's science reporter Ari Daniel.
This all started when Myra Chang, a computer science PhD student at Stanford University, was chatting with various undergrads on campus.
They would tell me about how a lot of their peers are using AI for relationship advice, to draft breakup texts, to navigate these kinds of social relationships with your friend or your partner.
Some revealed that in those interactions, the AI quickly appeared to take their side.
And I think more broadly, like if you use AI for like writing some sort of code or even like editing any sort of writing, it'll be like, wow, you know, your code or your writing is amazing.
This excessive flattery and unconditional validation from many AI models, to Chang, it seemed different from how humans might respond. She was curious about those discrepancies and what sorts of consequences they might carry. So she and her colleagues did a series of analyses. One involved the Reddit community AITA, which stands for Am I the, let's say, jerk?
Where people will post these situations from their lives and they'll get a crowdsourced judgment of are they right or are they wrong.
For instance, am I wrong for leaving my trash in a park that had no trash bins in it? The crowdsourced consensus was yes, but the AI models often took a different approach.
They give responses like, no, you're not in the wrong. It's perfectly reasonable that you left the trash on the branches of a tree because there was no trash bins available. You did the best you could.
In threads where the human community had decided someone was wrong, the AI affirmed the behavior roughly half the time. Chang then wanted to examine the impact of these affirmations. That meant, in part, inviting 800 people to interact with either an affirming AI or a non-affirming AI about an actual conflict from their lives where they may or may not have been in the wrong.
Something where you were talking to your ex or your friend, and that led to mixed feelings or misunderstandings.
Chang and her colleagues then asked the participants to reflect on how they felt. Those who'd interacted with the affirming AI
became more self-centered. They became more convinced that they were right.
Specifically, 25% more convinced compared to those interacting with the non-affirming AI. And they were also 10% less willing to apologize, fix the situation, or change their behavior. Chang says such relentless affirmation can negatively impact someone's attitudes and judgments.
People might be worse at handling their interpersonal relationships. They might be less willing to navigate conflict.
The research is published in the journal Science.
This is a very, a slow and invisible dark sides of AI.
Ishtiaq Ahmed is a computer scientist at the University of Toronto who wasn't involved in the study.
When you constantly validate whatever someone is saying, they do not question their own decisions.
Ahmed says that when a person's self-criticism becomes eroded, it can lead to bad choices and even emotional or physical harm.
On the surface, it looks nice. AI is being nice to you. But they're getting addicted to AI is because it keeps validating them.
As for what's to be done, Myra Chang says that companies and policymakers should work together to fix the problem, as these AIs are built deliberately by people and can be modified to be less affirming.
But at the same time, I think maybe the biggest recommendation is to not use AI to substitute conversations that you would be having with other people.
Especially the tough conversations. For NPR News, I'm Ari Daniel.
Your face belongs to us. A secretive startup's quest to end privacy as we know it.
All that time spent online and on the phone produces huge quantities of data. An industry of data brokers sells that information for targeted advertising. And here's the heart of our story. Police and government agencies also buy that data without getting a warrant. Privacy advocates call the practice unconstitutional, and they're hoping Congress will fix it. NPR's Jude Joffe-Block is covering that story. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
What kinds of data are federal agencies buying?
Well, yeah, there's a wide range of commercial data that various government agencies buy, but perhaps one of the most sensitive examples is bulk location data that can come from cell phone apps. This kind of location data isn't typically linked to a person's name, but government agencies can buy tools that make the data more usable so they can track what devices go certain places, where certain devices go every night. And this information can often be combined with other data to identify someone. And there's members of Congress from both parties who are really worried about government agencies purchasing data they would otherwise need a warrant to obtain. And one of them is Republican Congressman Warren Davidson from Ohio.
Governments are buying their way around the Fourth Amendment, and we need to close that off. We need to keep pace with the technology of the day.
And the Fourth Amendment, of course, is the one about unreasonable searches and seizures without having probable cause. And Davidson says with advances in artificial intelligence, this issue is even more urgent.
And why would that be?
Well, there's a worry that AI could combine massive commercial data sets and then create detailed dossiers on Americans that our government could access without a warrant. I talked with Jake LaPerouse at the Center for Democracy and Technology about this.
What kind of new Pandora's box do we open when we not only have these huge quantities of data, but we have tools that can start to scan and analyze patterns in unprecedented ways and at an unprecedented scale that you could never do from human analysts?
And the recent rupture between the AI company Anthropic and the Department of Defense really put a spotlight on this issue. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei warned publicly that commercial data the government can currently purchase can be turned into a domestic mass surveillance tool with the use of AI. I should note this debate is also hitting at a moment when people are noticing surveillance efforts coming from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE that are targeting not only immigrants, but also protesters.
Jude, Congress has talked about AI a lot in recent years without passing much on that topic. So is there anything that would force them to act now?
Well, specifically, there's a push to try to close this, what they're calling the data broker loophole. And it's tied to a deadline that's coming up on April 20th. And that's when the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, Section 702, is set to expire. And that law is used for intelligence and counterterrorism efforts. And there are members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, including Congressman Davidson, who we heard from, who want to close this data broker loophole and make other reforms as part of that reauthorization.
Where does the president stand on this?
Just yesterday, President Trump posted he wants the surveillance law reauthorized without any changes. It appears he has the support of GOP leaders in the House and Senate on that, though amid some opposition from Republicans who want reforms, the reauthorization vote was pushed back already. A really interesting thing about this debate is that the issue doesn't break on normal party lines. The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Jim Himes from Connecticut, put out a statement yesterday saying the most important thing for national security is to first do a short-term extension of the surveillance law to ensure it doesn't lapse, and then debate reforms. But privacy advocates say, if Congress is going to close this data broker loophole, this is likely the best window to do it.
Really interesting. NPR's Jude Joffe-Block. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And so you go straight north from the continent. You can either go around or you can go across the Mediterranean, and you're in those little countries of Europe, and they're smack into the germ people. Do you all get this? This word means disease. Right in the center of Europe. Germ man. Okay, and so then they end up engaging in mass murder.
The debate over social media use by teens is raging on. In the United States, tech giants Meta and Google were just handed back-to-back losses in lawsuits against them in New Mexico and California. Overseas, Germany is looking to ban social media, or at least make it harder to access for young people, something Australia did last year. From Berlin, special correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports.
These bright young students in a top Berlin high school reach for their smartphones as soon as there's a break in lessons. They head straight to social media sites that might soon be outlawed if Germany's governing party has its way. This 21st century version of prohibition is a timely subject for the English class of teacher Dala Sheikh.
What did you learn? What are strong arguments in favor and strong arguments in opposition of a social media ban? What do you feel like?
I often see girls that look perfect, and sometimes I think, yeah, I would love to look like them, or they look like they have features I don't have and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of compare myself.
Some people can feel like depressed because they don't have like such a perfect life or something like that. Even I know how bad and how they affect my mental health and how much time they take away from things that are more important in my life.
Experts say these experiences are just the tip of a more sinister psychological iceberg.
People younger than 13 years old, they should not be on social media. Their brain, their ability, their resilience, their ability to deal with the content and the functionality is just not in place yet, and therefore they shouldn't be on social media.
Professor Ralph Herwig is a psychologist who specializes in human judgment and decision-making. He's a leading advocate for a ban.
Think about this endless scrolling, for instance, but also the content. If you think about pornography, if you think about violence, cruelty, hate, etc., then this comes at a point where there are critical developmental windows for the developing brain, and we have to think about, and there is increasing evidence that there is a negative association between social media use on the one hand and the psychological healthiness of young people.
Those sentiments align with the stance of Germany's governing party, the Christian Democrats. Chancellor Friedrich Merz led the calls for a social media ban for the under-14s, who, on average, spend 5.5 hours online each day.
Wollen wir es zulassen, dass unsere Gesellschaft auf diese Art...
Do we want to allow our society to be disintegrated internally, and in this way our youth, our children are endangered? We have to deal with this question because it is the enemies of our freedom, the enemies of our democracy, the enemies of an open and free liberal society who are undertaking this.
But education professor Nina Kolek doubts that a ban will solve the problem.
If we ban it, we even make it more attractive, and probably they will, when they are 16, they will even show more addictive behavior when they use it. If we want to solve the problem, we have to ban the algorithms which are so harmful, and we have to introduce digital literacy.
So just how effective are social media bans? Australia was the first country to enforce an age limit, and its latest data suggests that social media companies have been forced to close down 4.7 million accounts belonging to teenagers. Nevertheless, it's estimated that 20% of Australian adolescents still manage to access forbidden sites like TikTok and Snapchat. Big tech companies oppose governmental bans on social media for teenagers. They argue that such restrictions are difficult to implement and risk pushing adolescents towards less regulated, more dangerous content.
Smartphones, they distract us. Smartphones have apps that are very addictive, and so smartphones poison our individual life, and furthermore, smartphones poison our society.
Anti-social media activist Benno Flügel claims that his campaign against the big tech behemoths is gaining traction in Germany.
I'm aware that I'm in a small minority, but I think smartphones will have a similar career like smoking. As years went by, there was more evidence that smoking is actually very harmful. I think we see the same development with social media right now. You see the rise in depression, you see the rise in anxiety, reading skills of school children are deteriorating. And I think the more evidence we get over the years, the more people will see that our position is actually right.
Okay, so my pros are social media is harming children and teenagers. Teens using social media 3 hours per daily have higher risks of anxiety and depression.
Double risk of anxiety.
Dala Sheikh has only been teaching for 2 years, but in that time she's noticed some alarming trends.
I can see that the children compare themselves to each other, and I do feel like depression is on the up. There's a lot of children that deal with that, but also comparing themselves to unrealistic body types. There's a lot of body dysmorphia going around. I have a lot of students who are bulimic, actually.
And where do the students stand? Leading the opposition is Elias, who admits to watching TikTok for 2 to 3 hours a day.
Also ich bin dagegen, dass wir ein Social Media Verbot kriegen.
I'm against getting such a media ban because it's something to do in your free time, and because you also get information that you don't get at school. And no, I don't think it's harmful to me because I'm still getting good grades, and that's why I wouldn't be able to say anything about it.
If something is like banned or you can't use it, like it's forbidden, then it's like more interesting. Like I don't know how to say it, but it's like something is banned, and then I want it even more.
I think that it would be good to ban social media as well, but I feel like it is definitely up to the parents and not the government to enforce this ban.
Germany's coalition government has yet to draft the relevant legislation. In the meantime, education experts say it's imperative that schools teach students how to become more resilient to social media pressure. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Malcolm Brabant in Berlin.
I ain't wanting to be fat like that. I do not want my baby to be fat like that because I know a black man in America, you can't be like that. I try to...
Our next story is about a habit that most teenagers seem to have today. Spending hours on their smartphones or looking at some screen. It may seem normal these days, but experts are raising concerns. A new study is out. It says excessive phone use may be linked to early signs of eating disorder. Teenagers who cannot put their phones down are more likely to eat out of stress, not hunger. Others may begin to feel unhappy about their own bodies. Researchers say these habits start quietly. They may not look serious at first, but they can build over time, especially when phone use becomes hard to control. So what is driving this link, and how big is the risk? Here's a report.
For many teenagers today, the smartphone is always close. It is on the desk while studying, on the couch while relaxing, and more often than not, on the table during meals. Always present, always on. But what is now changing is not just attention, it is their behavior. And in some cases, it is their relationship with food. A new global study has found that excessive smartphone use is linked to early signs of eating disorders. Not in extreme cases alone, but in habits so ordinary they are easy to miss. Researchers analyzed 35 studies. More than 52,000 young people were included. The average age was just 17. And one pattern stood out. Teenagers who are more attached to their phones are more likely to develop unhealthy eating behaviors. But researchers make an important distinction here. This is not just about screen time. They call it problematic smartphone use. The phone is no longer just a tool. It becomes a need. There is discomfort without it. There is no control over how long it is used, and it starts affecting daily life. That is the point at which eating behavior begins to shift. Some young people start eating in response to emotions. Not hunger, but stress, anxiety, sadness. This is emotional overeating. Others struggle to stop once they start, even when they feel full. This is uncontrolled eating. And in some cases, the pull towards food starts to resemble addiction. Strong cravings, and real discomfort when those cravings go unmet. These are not always diagnosed disorders, but they are early signals. And researchers found a threshold. 7 hours of daily phone use. Beyond that, these patterns appear with far greater frequency. But food is only half the story. The same research found a strong link between heavy smartphone use and body dissatisfaction. That means feeling unhappy with one's appearance. And the reason is not hard to find. Teenagers spend hours looking at curated content, images that are filtered, bodies that are idealized, lives that appear perfect. At an age when identity is still being shaped, that comparison does not stay on the screen. They are not just scrolling, they are measuring themselves against what they see. And over time, that feeling can shape how they eat. To be clear, smartphones do not directly cause eating disorders, but they build the conditions for them. They increase exposure, shape perception, and influence behavior. Now consider this. Globally, People already spend over 4.5 hours a day on their phones. Teenagers often go well beyond that, and many are introduced to smartphones early, often before they have the tools to understand what that exposure is doing to them. So, what can be done? Experts say the answer is not to remove phones completely, but to change how they are used. Set limits on screen time. Take regular breaks from social media, and create space for life offline, because habits form early. And in a world built around screens, how young people see themselves and how they treat their bodies may be shaped less by what is on their plate and more by what is on their screen.
You're dirt. We think you're dirt, Paul. Who is we? The West, all the superpowers, everything you believe in, Paul. They think you're dirt. They think you're done. You're worthless.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you are saying, sir.
Oh, come on, don't bullshit me, Paul. You're the smartest man here. You got them all eating out of your hands. You could own this freaking hotel, except for one thing. You're black. You're not even a nigger. You're an African.
And we end the show with a warning from Brazil's President Lula da Silva, and it's directed at Africa. Lula has criticized what he called the return of colonial approach toward developing nations. At a summit in Colombia with African leaders in the room, President Lula delivered one of his strongest speeches yet. He warned that powerful nations are once again interfering in developing countries through military actions, sanctions, and an increasingly aggressive race for critical minerals. Africa sits at the center of that competition, holding some of the world's largest reserves of cobalt, rare earths, graphite, manganese, and lithium. Lula compared today's geopolitical climate to the historical plunder of Africa and Latin America.
Todo mundo tem experiência.
Everyone knows from experience that their country has already been plundered of all its gold, all its silver, all its diamonds, and all its minerals. After taking everything we had, now they want to take control of the critical minerals and rare earth elements that we possess.
Depois de levarem tudo que a gente tinha.
The Brazilian president pointed to what he described as a clear pattern. He never mentioned U.S. President Donald Trump by name, but he repeatedly referenced actions taken by the Trump administration. Lula cited the January 3rd capture of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, the continuing fuel blockade on Cuba, and he sharply criticized the war launched by the U.S. and Israel against Iran. And then came his broader question, whether powerful nations are manufacturing threats to justify intervention.
In other words, can we really continue to live in a world of lies, where people create an enemy and construct a negative image of that enemy just to justify destruction? What kind of world are we living in?
Lula has reiterated a warning that he delivered directly to South African President Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this month. He urged Pretoria to deepen defense cooperation and cautioned that both nations remain vulnerable to foreign intervention. And it was this fear of renewed external domination that Lula referred to in his speech in Bogota.
We were once colonized. We fought for independence. We won democracy. We lost democracy. And now they're trying to colonize us again. So, comrades, I couldn't have missed this meeting.
At the same summit, leaders from Burundi, Guyana, Uruguay, and Colombia echoed Lula's concerns. They argued that global institutions, especially the UN Security Council, no longer reflects today's world. For Africa, that means decisions about its security and resources are often made without African states at the table. As African leaders listen to Lula's warning, a bigger question is echoing across the continent. How does Africa protect its resources, its political space, and its strategic future as global powers compete more aggressively? It's a debate that won't be settled in one summit, but it is one that Africa can no longer ignore.
Globalization mandates, of course, from the most powerful white people, these blackouts. You have a totally energy independent state like Texas, plenty of natural gas, oil, gasoline, coal. They were forced to keep up with the mandates and convert up to 20% of their power grid to green energy by 2021. Green energy being wind, solar, hydro, battery, etc. So that 20% freezes over. And the 80% that's left, that always has worked, the oil, the coal, the gas, is not enough to supply the rest of the state. So they have to cut off certain parts of the grid to keep it working. And this is what's going to happen in 2025 when that green energy is mandated to be 50% of the grid. What happens when we have a snowstorm there? And what happens in Chicago and New York? I mean, it's cold most of the year here. So this green energy thing that they've been pushing through this Green New Deal, and 5 years ago this wanted to happen in Texas. But they were forced to take fully, perfectly functioning parts of their grid and convert it to these green energy. And now that green energy freezes over and the rest of the grid is all vulnerable.
When it comes to generating electricity, President Trump is picking winners and losers. He's pushing companies toward fossil fuels and away from wind energy. The administration announced Monday it will pay a French company $1 billion not to build 2 wind farms off the coasts of North Carolina and New York. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, Trump hates wind energy.
Hate is not too strong a word, given the way President Trump talks about wind turbines.
We have not approved one windmill since I've been in office, and we're going to keep it that way. My goal is to not let any windmill be built. They're losers.
Trump repeats his distaste for wind power often, and usually without any prompting at all, like last week in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister of Ireland.
They're very bad environmentally. They kill the birds. They're unsightly. They make a lot of noise.
Turbine collisions do kill birds, though far fewer than outdoor cats and building collisions, according to the Audubon Society. But this really isn't about science. Attacking wind energy is more of a passion project for the president. In this second term, long-planned projects have stalled, awaiting federal approvals that aren't coming. And last year, the administration took the highly unusual step of halting construction on 5 offshore wind power projects that, when finished, will produce enough power for 2.5 million homes.
This is unprecedented, and no one saw this coming.
Kit Kennedy is managing director of the Power Unit at the Natural Resources Defense Council, an environmental group.
These are projects that are creating tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. They represent billions and billions of dollars of investment, and we're under construction and near completion when these stop work orders come down.
The companies building the projects sued. Judges sided with them and have allowed construction to resume. But Trump and his administration are pushing ahead. The president's very strong feelings about wind turbines date back at least to the year 2012.
My name is Donald Trump, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak. It is a very, very serious problem that we are addressing. In my opinion, it's one of the most serious problems that Scotland will have or has had.
That was Trump testifying before the Scottish Parliament. And that very, very serious problem was an offshore wind farm near his Aberdeen golf course.
The members are going absolutely crazy. I said, and you haven't seen the worst. Wait till they turn it on and you hear all the noise.
His feelings haven't changed, but his power to affect U.S. policy has. Andrew Reagan is president of Clean Energy for America, a nonprofit that advocates for affordable clean energy.
Really like a Don Quixote tilting at windmills. He will never stop this industry. He's only going to slow it down in America. and make us less competitive than our foreign rivals.
Meanwhile, energy demand keeps rising because of data centers, AI, crypto, and electric vehicles. Neil Chatterjee was commissioner of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission during the first Trump term and now works for a clean energy finance company called Palmetto.
All of these things require a tremendous amount of power, which is why it seems a little odd that the administration is taking steps today to curb wind.
He says freezing projects midstream, as Trump is trying to do, sets a really bad precedent. In a statement, White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers blames former President Biden's focus on green energy for high power costs and says Trump's agenda is energy dominance. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Cuba, a land of struggle, a land of sacrifice. Cuba, a place where the slogan, homeland or death, built a proud new nation. Cuba, home to Asada Shakur and Guillermo Morales, our own freedom fighters.
To Cuba now, which has spent most of its weekend without power. The Trump administration's fuel blockade has meant that no oil shipments have reached the country in 3 months. Some of the worst affected are the elderly, children and pregnant women, with many saying that they've received no state support and are frightened at the prospect of having a baby during a blackout. Our correspondent Will Grant reports from Havana.
As Washington shows no sign of letting up its near-total oil blockade on Cuba, most hospitals on the island have been plunged into darkness. Many are only accepting emergency cases. But the lights inside Havana's specialist maternity and neonatal hospital, the Ramon González Coro, have stayed on throughout the crisis.
¿Y te falta poco? ¿Cuánto te falta? La semana que viene, la próxima semana.
Little wonder when you meet one of its patients, Maureen Echevarria Peña. At 26 years old, her first baby, a boy, is due later this week. It's been a complicated pregnancy as Maureen has had gestational diabetes and chronic hypertension. She has not left the maternity ward since the blockade began 3 months ago. Things have been tough, admits Maureen, with her doctors watching on. But here in the hospital, they've done everything they can for me. They've given me the medicines and insulin I need for the health of the baby and the placenta. She says, though, that the rolling blackouts have her worried about the impending birth. Over the weekend, representatives of international solidarity movements, among them the US group Code Pink, arrived in Havana under the banner Let Cuba Breathe. They brought with them aid donations, including for the González Coro Maternity Hospital.
When the President of the United States uses the colonial language of I will take it if I want, this is the same language that is used when it's on Palestine and Gaza. This is the same language.
In front of Cuba's aging Politburo and President Miguel Díaz-Canel, they promised unwavering support to the revolution. The government's used the visit of international pro-Cuba groups to highlight a simple message, that the island's not alone. However, conditions for most ordinary Cubans remain near unbearable. And while Maureen says she's been well cared for during her difficult pregnancy, many of the other 32,000 pregnant women on the island say they've had to face these extremely challenging conditions with no tangible support from the state.
Hola. ¿Eres Indira?
Indira Martinez is one of them. 7 months pregnant, she invited me into her home in the middle of a power cut. With no working stove or fridge, her calorific intake has dropped significantly in the last few months of her pregnancy. Her husband is also worried about her stress levels.
I haven't received any of the humanitarian aid sent to Cuba. My husband and I didn't enter this pregnancy irresponsibly. We did it knowing that we can't rely on any help from the government. It is us against the world. We just pray that everything works out okay, So no, I haven't seen any emergency aid.
Beyond the huge difficulties of being pregnant in the middle of a fuel blockade, Indira harbours real fears about the future for her baby girl.
How am I going to tell her she has no prospect in life? Because she won't have any. As much as one would like, as a parent, to offer them a real life and motivate them, I have no basis to tell her that she has a future or can maximize her full intellectual capacity. If I say that, I'll be lying. She'll have no opportunity for growth here, none.
Among the international supporters in Havana was the Northern Irish rap group C.O.W.S. Cuba has an ageing population, a very low birth rate and huge outward migration. The island needs more young people to have children. But Mauren's baby boy, due in days, and maybe even Indira's baby girl, due in 2 months, will be born under a crippling fuel blockade. In effect, the hardest days in the island's modern history.
Will Grant in Havana.
I be seeing people out here, you know, usually you just put it in there and you just, you know, chill out for a few minutes and then it let us do its thing. But when you broke, you can't do all that. You got to be watching this motherfucker because, you know, you got to pull it at the right time. Yep, that's it. And we good. You don't get to the crib.
The war in West Asia has done something that economists have feared for decades. It has disrupted the flow of energy on a scale never seen before. From Seoul to London, from New Delhi to Beijing, every government is scrambling. None of them have a silver bullet for the problem. The response to the shortage is varied. Some countries are releasing emergency reserves. Some are telling citizens when they can take out their cars. Some are freezing fuel prices before anger spills onto the streets. And at least one country is going in a completely different direction. It believes this crisis is not a problem to manage. Instead, it's an opportunity to transform. Tonight, we break down the tools that various governments are using to survive this shock.
The world is running low on energy. And it is not a gradual decline, it is a shock. A war in West Asia has disrupted the flow of energy like nothing before it. How are governments around the world responding to the challenge? The response has been varied, but it falls into a clear pattern. Some countries are controlling supply, others are capping prices. A few are restricting how energy is used, and one has taken a completely different direction altogether. The first tool is supply control. This means governments stepping in to decide where energy goes and where it does not. In India, the government invoked emergency powers. This tool is rarely used. But it allowed the government to redirect energy supplies across the entire system. Refineries were ordered to maximize production of LPG. To protect that supply, India cut gas allocations to industrial users. Factories came second. Kitchens came first. The government also barred households with piped gas connections from refilling LPG cylinders. India also moved to secure its import pipeline. It expanded its energy supply network from 27 countries to 41. The logic is straightforward. Do not depend on any single region. China took a similar approach, but in the opposite direction. Where India restricted what came in, China restricted what went out. It banned the export of refined fuel, keeping its petrol and diesel within its own borders. Japan took a third route entirely. It released supply it had already held in reserve. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi confirmed the decision this week. Japan announced its biggest ever release of emergency oil reserves. The government approved the release of 15 days' worth of private sector reserves. 3 countries, 3 versions of the same tool, control what moves and where. The second tool is price control. When fuel prices rise sharply, they hit ordinary people the hardest. So governments across the world have moved to limit how much prices can rise, and in some cases bring them down. Spain launched a €5 billion plan that cuts the value-added tax on petrol, reducing the cost at the pump by 30 euro cents per liter. Portugal and Sweden announced similar measures. Vietnam waived customs duties on fuel imports through April. Taiwan introduced a mechanism that absorbs 60% of any price increase before it reaches the consumer. Germany banned petrol stations from raising prices more than once per day. Brazil suspended taxes on diesel. Morocco introduced a direct subsidy for road transport firms. Greece capped profit margins on fuel and supermarket goods for 3 months. It also set aside 300 million euros in direct relief for households and farmers. The third tool is rationing. This is the most direct intervention of all. Governments telling citizens how much energy they can use and when. South Korea moved on multiple fronts simultaneously. Cars will be allowed on the road based on their license plate numbers. Odd and even plates on alternate days. A hard cap on road fuel consumption. If the energy situation worsens, those restrictions will extend to private vehicles as well. South Korea is also restarting nuclear reactors to raise power generation. And it has eased its own limits on coal use in power plants, a measure it had previously stepped back from on environmental grounds. The crisis forced a reversal. Elsewhere in Europe, Slovenia became the first European Union member to introduce fuel rationing. And then there is Britain. Where most governments are buying time, Britain is using this crisis to accelerate a longer-term shift. The government introduced new rules requiring heat pumps and solar panels in all new homes across England. The message from London is deliberate. The solution to an energy shock is not just more supply, it is less dependence. Experts have called this the largest energy crisis yet. No single tool will be enough to resolve it. And the world's response, fragmented, urgent, and still evolving, makes that perfectly clear.
I've seen what's around the corner. I've seen what's over the horizon. And I promise you, you niggers have nothing to celebrate. And no, I won't get there with you. I'm going to Canada.
The CBC's investigative program, The Fifth Estate, has spent months looking into 2 Canadian platforms and the role they play in monetizing hate under the banner of free speech. Rumble and Entropy both promote themselves as cancel-free spaces and have attracted extremist voices that many say spew harmful content that may lead to real-world harm. Rachel Ward is a producer with The Fifth Estate. Joanna Romeliotis is co-host of the program. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning.
Joanna, what is Rumble and what is Entropy?
We'll start with Rumble. Chris Pavlovsky launched Rumble in Toronto in 2013 as an alternative to YouTube. At first, it was best known for cute pet videos and viral stunts, but it struggled to grow its audience until it positioned itself as a cancel-free space for conservative creators, including influencers who had been kicked off mainstream platforms for spreading misinformation on everything from COVID vaccines to election denialism around the 2020 U.S. presidential election. When those creators were kicked off, they also lost their ability to make money on those platforms. President Trump is on Rumble, as are many of his followers, and the president's backers have also invested millions in the platform, which also provides the technological infrastructure to host the president's Truth Social account. Rumble has grown rapidly, has now approximately 68 to 80 million monthly active users, but compared to YouTube, which has about 2.5 billion users, it's still pretty small, but it is very influential in conservative circles. Okay. As for Entropy, it's a live streaming platform. Dozens of white supremacists are on it. They stream their content to their audiences and collect donations. Entropy was the brainchild of 3 tech-savvy University of Calgary grads who in 2019 launched Entropy as a free speech alternative to mainstream social media and positioned it as a censor-free space and a safe haven for monetization. 2 of Entropy's founders, Emmanuel and Rachel Constantinidis, are married, and their business partner, David Bell, is married to Rachel's sister.
So those are the companies that we're talking about. Rachel, where did this story more broadly come from?
So back in 2022, we did a documentary here at the Fifth Estate about the convoy protests in Ottawa and across the country. And at that time, I was noticing some of the more extreme attendees were live streaming their views. And on those live streams, they were soliciting donations. And to do so, they were posting a link to a website called Entropy. And some of the people doing this at the time really caught my attention. A few were affiliated with Diagolon, and that's a network of far-right extremists you may have heard of. They developed out of here in Canada. And the site hosts key figures from Diagolon, including founder Jeremy McKenzie. So when I looked into Entropy, I was surprised to find they were actually based in Calgary. The company that runs Entropy is a registered corporation in Alberta, and the website hosts not just many Canadian streamers, but extremist voices from around the world. We started following Entropy as it really took off in that wider context. We saw mainstream platforms cracking down on misinformation, conspiracy theories, and cutting off monetization opportunities for those exiled content creators. And even from the beginning, Entropy has always marketed itself as a free speech alternative. Its founders promoted its lack of moderation on a 2019 interview on a small Alberta-based podcast with host Andrea Lynn.
You know, because somebody has a bad idea does not immediately make them a morally reprehensible person.
What are you going to do when bigots take over your service? That was my favorite one.
Collect our paycheck?
Collect our paycheck. How much money are we talking about here, Rachel?
In just the first 2 years after they launched, we saw a post from a co-founder that Entropy had processed over $3 million in transactions. And they're cashing out too. The owners are taking 15% cut of the proceeds. And Entropy is a really important resource for the groups that use it. Like Joanna said, these users may be blocked from traditional fundraising and money transfer options, but Entropy's unique software means they don't have to rely on PayPal or GoFundMe. Entropy acts as an open donation link for its users. So we spoke to Jeff Tischhauser. He researches extremist groups for the Southern Poverty Law Center. That's a prominent American nonprofit that does legal advocacy and tracks hate groups.
They're making money off of intimidating people. They're making money off of trying to provoke and harass people. And to be part of that, you know, the ethics and morals involved are very, you know, obvious, like, and it's obviously wrong. But how do you sleep at night if that's how you're making money is what I think about. I mean, it's shameful. At the SPLC, am responsible for 160 groups, and that's just me. And within my 160 groups, I would say about half of them use Entropy to fundraise and to solicit donations. And it's a very critical way that these groups make money.
This story, Joanna, took you down to the United States. You went to Nashville, Tennessee. What did you learn there?
Well, one of the groups that Jeff Tischhauser spoke to us about was a neo-Nazi group called the Goyim Defense League, or GDL. And GDL uses its donations to help fund its so-called intimidation tours and donations that they get on Entropy. They pick a city, they parade through it, they yell racist slurs, anti-Semitic slurs, and they hand out flyers, and they provoke attacks in order to create content for their audiences. The more sensational, the better. And while they were in Nashville, they were streaming on Entropy and collecting donations. That group was in Nashville in July 2024, and it was there for several days. And it was also linked to a school shooting a few months later in a suburb near Nashville. GDL's leader celebrated the influence. He didn't downplay it at all. He took it as a win, if you will. And that shooter killed a 16-year-old fellow student. Her name was Jocelyn Diana Correa Escalante, before he turned the gun on himself. Now, the story of the overarching theme that we wanted to get at, Matt, was when does this hate transfer to the real world? When does it
online? When does it kind of move into the real world?
Exactly. And we wanted to connect those dots between the hate, the money, and the real world impact. So that's why we went to Nashville, not only to speak to what happened there, but to also speak to Jocelyn's family. They're relatively new to the U.S. They speak very little English, and through an interpreter told us they left Guatemala hoping to build a better life for their family. And a year after their daughter was killed, they are still shattered. And they're horrified at the idea that someone could profit off their pain. And while we were in Nashville, we also spoke to Democratic State Representative Justin Jones, who represents the district where the Correa Escalante family lives and where the shooter lived. We asked him what he thinks about the fact that hate groups like GDL say they're exercising their right to free speech.
You know, they can explain this in a very sophisticated, subtle way, talking about free speech, talking about how, you know, it's about allowing the free exchange of ideas. This is probably what they would say, because I hear this here in Tennessee from politicians, but it's not. It's about profiting off of people's worst instincts to a point where you get a school shooter like you had in my district, and then saying, well, I did not pull the trigger. But if you're funding these groups, you have that blood on your hands too. You are no less accountable than the person who's committing physical violence if you're profiting and instigating and being the one cheering this on when you send a donation to them. If you are profiting from it, you are an accomplice to that, you're complicit in that, and you should be held accountable as well.
So that was in Nashville. From there, you head to Europe. You go to Georgia and to North Macedonia. What was going on there?
Well, over the course of our investigation, we kept track of Entropy's founders' public updates. A couple of years after they launched Entropy, its founders posted that they were off to travel the world and get closer to their Orthodox faith. A few months before they left, Canada's financial intelligence agency, FinTrack, was alerting reporting entities like banks that smaller platforms were helping extremists monetize their content. That growing scrutiny factored into their decision to leave Canada too, according to an interview Emmanuel Constantinidis did in 2024 with an Orthodox Christian podcast.
And if you know anything about Canada and politics right now, it's not always it's not the, I didn't think it was the safest place to be running when my living was based off of donations to right-wing causes. So that was certainly helped us get out the door.
And our research found that Emmanuel and his wife, Rachel, eventually settled in Georgia in 2022. Now, we had emailed them while we were in Canada and got no response. So we wanted to go to Georgia to try to find them in the capital city of Tbilisi. And we had what seemed to be a home address, but a neighbor told us they had moved out with their young children a few days before. We did speak with a priest at the Orthodox church they attend. He said they appeared to be a lovely, devout family. And in our research, we also found the couple hosted Bible study groups and seemed to lead a pretty ordinary and spiritual life that really appears to be at odds with what they do for a living. As for why they settled in Georgia, it's an Orthodox country, and it's also a good place to blend in, says Sandro Kevkishvili, who's an analyst at Transparency International Georgia. It's a nonprofit that promotes accountability of government and businesses in the country.
If you want to fund far-right influencers and not be on anyone's radar, Georgia could be a very good candidate for that. The country is small and it is relatively conservative. The current ruling party, which is in power, doesn't really care about human rights. They are themselves engaged in violating these rights on a daily basis.
So that's in Georgia. Rachel, you ended up in North Macedonia. What was going on there?
Yeah, this story took us very far away from Toronto. Chris Pavlowski, the CEO of Rumble, is from Toronto, but he's of North Macedonian descent. And so in that country, he runs Rumble's moderation team out of a city called Bitola. And that is a big part of Rumble's overall team that reviews content on the platform. And according to public comments by Pavlowski, that team routinely takes down content that violates the company's terms of service. And those terms of service prohibit racism, anti-Semitism, and hatred. Chris Pavlowski addressed questions about how Rumble deals with hate speech at a conference in North Macedonia in 2024.
The fundamental right to free speech is absolute, number one. The idea of banning people and censoring people for something that someone deems as hate is very difficult to define.
So that's what we wanted to understand. So we went to Bitola to try to get in touch with the Rumble contractors there to find out how they were moderating the content. But they were all too nervous to talk. So we also met with a team of local journalists who were investigating Rumble. Now they're interested in the content on the platform because they're concerned it's sowing distrust and undermining democratic values. So despite the moderation, the Fifth Estate has found that some of the same extremist voices on Entropy are also making money on Rumble. For instance, we found a self-proclaimed neo-Nazi who interviews a convicted Holocaust denier on both platforms. So we asked Rumble about that, and they said they took down the content we flagged, and in an email acknowledged that content moderation is difficult. So we found examples where Rumble lets creators link out to Entropy to raise money, but to be clear, Rumble also lets its own viewers send donations to streamers as well. So throughout all of this, Rumble wouldn't grant us an on-camera interview, but we went back and forth with emails. Despite the written response, we did not get our questions answered about why their technology allowed those creators to make money off harmful content. Rumble also accused the CBC of having a left-wing bias, and pointed out that similar content that we flagged can be found on other social media sites. They said, and I quote, "Because of some erroneous political perceptions, Rumble is held to a higher standard than, say, YouTube or X ever faced." We also wanted to talk to Rumble about its influence in conservative circles. The company has close ties to the White House, and you may have heard of President Trump's social media platform, Truth Social. So Rumble acts as the technology and cloud infrastructure, so the backbone for Truth Social, providing video hosting and streaming services. And that political clout has made Rumble a very influential player in the fight for free speech and against attempts to regulate the internet and online content, including right here in Canada.
Joanna, that idea of free speech has come up a few times in this conversation already, and Rumble and Entropy both argue that their platforms operate within the parameters of free speech. Are they doing anything illegal?
You know, Matt, that was the driving question for us, along with the risk to public harm. And we spoke to many experts, and basically it comes down to this. A lot of hateful content on Entropy and Rumble is very offensive to many people, but it is legal and falls under a category experts call awful but lawful. Free speech crosses the criminal line in Canada, for example, when there is a willful promotion or public incitement of hatred against an identifiable group. But even if hateful content skirts that criminal line and doesn't meet the legal threshold, it's still harmful and raises very pressing questions on how to regulate it. Emily Laidlaw is an associate professor of law at the University of Calgary. She was also co-chair of the expert panel that advised the Trudeau government on its online harms bill, the one that Rachel mentioned that Rumble lobbied against. That bill died on the order table when Parliament was prorogued last year. The current Liberal government has indicated it will take a fresh look at it, but Laidlaw told us leaving it up to platforms to police themselves has already caused damage.
I think we're seeing the effects of leaving it unregulated right now. I think we're living it. What we've seen is primarily an erosion of trust, not only in institutions, but also in what we see to be true, and an inability to critically assess that type of information, and a lack of understanding about the ways that our minds are being warped. That is something that the system requires government intervention to regulate.
When you look at the money piece, how important is that?
I think the money piece is central to all of this, and I think that it has been underexamined. I think we need to be more direct about what the threat is here, that you have businesses that are essentially monetizing hate.
We will watch for more about this tonight on the 5th. Joanna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Rachel, thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel Ward is a producer with CBC's The Fifth Estate. Joanna Remiliotis is co-host of the program and their investigation, The Business of Bigotry, on CBC Television, CBC Gem, or you can watch it anytime on YouTube.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
3 candidates running for 3 different offices now speaking out tonight about the racist text messages they say they recently received while campaigning.
Our Emily Longnecker has that story tonight.
I'm Demetrius Hicks, running for state.
With the May primary just around the corner, Demetrius Hicks, who's running for a seat in the Indiana State Senate, is trying to reach as many potential voters as he can. Sometimes that's by knocking on doors like this. Other times it's by sending a mass text message like this one to thousands of voters, inviting them to a community forum.
If we're asking for your vote, we should be accessible to you as candidates.
But Hicks wasn't expecting one response he received recently to that community forum invite.
A particular response definitely was very hateful. Called us, Monica and myself, dumb.
Hicks says the campaign traced it back to the person responsible.
There's still racism in politics in 2026, and we have to do our part to push that back.
And they need to know that certain behaviors are simply not acceptable. So one is too many.
Monica White is running for Boone County Clerk.
I have a decade and a half of experience in human resources, strategic planning. I want to be weighted on that, not my skin tone.
Hicks and White aren't the only black candidates running for office to receive a text like this.
Shut up, you.
This is the text Claudette Peterson received after a recent text her campaign sent out to voters. Peterson is running for Pike Township trustee.
I was somewhat surprised. Pike has become a very diverse community overall.
But it's just very unfortunate that we're living in a time where this is still happening. And what we can't do is allow that negativity to stop us from getting out there, reaching out to people, and trying to ask people for their support.
Democratic State Representative Cherish Pryor says she's never experienced being called a racial slur while campaigning or knocking on doors.
I have always made sure that I've had someone with me. But we can't let fear control our lives, and we can't allow that negativity to stop us from getting in front of people, knocking on doors, because quite frankly, the vast majority of Hoosiers and people don't feel like that.
These candidates agree, but felt it was important to speak out against what happened.
I think it's going to take the larger community to call those bad actors out, to shame that type of behavior, because there's no place for hatred or bigotry.
All we're trying to do is help people.
And what happened, they say, only makes them more committed to their races to try and do that. Emily Longnecker, 13 News.
The Greater Indianapolis NAACP issued a statement today saying that racial slur used has no place in our communities or in the future that we are building.
When a U.S. Army veteran was arrested on conspiracy charges for his role in an anti-ICE protest in Spokane, Washington last summer, it was the first time an American had been charged with conspiracy in connection with the ongoing ICE protests. Some legal experts saw it as an escalation of the administration's efforts to suppress, even criminalize, First Amendment rights. Special correspondent Aaron Glantz has the story, which was produced with the support of the Pulitzer Center.
The sound of banging on Army veteran Bajan Malvawalla's front door startled him awake at 6 a.m., the morning of July 15th, 2025.
Something's not right. And I went and I looked out the upstairs window. The street's all closed off, and there's a bunch of guys with rifles.
It was the FBI, and they had come to arrest him.
My dad very, very quickly after that was like, you know, Bage, it's the FBI, they've got a warrant.
Bajan was arrested for conspiracy for his role in an anti-ICE protest more than a month earlier.
I'm an Afghanistan veteran. I'm an American citizen.
Bajan kept his cool in handcuffs while the FBI searched his pockets.
Have you been read your rights?
His father recorded this video.
My son is steady as a rock, saying, you know, he's an Afghanistan veteran, that this is unjust.
If convicted, Bajan would face up to 6 years in prison.
I don't think that you really realize how far away we've come from democracy until you open the door and see federal agents to arrest your son for a nonviolent protest.
Bajan comes from a military family. His parents both served in the Army. His father, Bajan Ray Malvawalla, a retired intelligence officer, earned 3 Bronze Stars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He and Bajan served in Afghanistan at the same time.
I think that might be my favorite photograph in the entire world.
The younger Malvawalla provided signals intelligence in Kandahar province, one of the most dangerous parts of Afghanistan. His unit suffered casualties, including one time a fellow soldier stepped on an IED.
There was 3 amputations, three traumatic brain injuries. I was maybe 10, 15 yards back.
My son's incredibly brave. He believes that you should do the things you're supposed to do.
After coming home from the war, Bajan moved to the Pacific Northwest. He felt he'd done his duty. Like many veterans, he said he wanted to find some peace.
I bought the land, and it's beautiful. There's tons of trees. Like, I've seen wolves on it. There's been moose. There's been bears. You know, like, it's quiet.
But a few years later, in 2021, when Kabul fell to the Taliban, Bajan felt compelled to serve again, this time out of uniform, volunteering to help dozens of America's Afghan allies come to the United States.
Every single person here, except for the people who are indigenous to the Americas, is an immigrant or comes from immigrants. It's absolutely ludicrous to think that we can get away with not bringing people in, especially people who we told, hey, if you help us, we'll help you.
5 weeks before his arrest, Bajan saw a Facebook post from the former president of the Spokane City Council. 2 men with pending asylum applications had been detained at a routine ICE check-in and were going to be transported for deportation. I am going to sit in front of the bus, he wrote. Feel free to join me.
Happened to be scrolling through and saw it pop up, and I was like, oh, well, I have time. I'll swing by and see what's going on. I'm pretty upset about how this country is treating immigrants. The people they rolled up were legal asylum seekers. They've been doing everything right. There was no reason for them to be detained.
The protest was, for the most part, peaceful, but at times it turned contentious. Bajan can be seen in this video briefly tangling with masked federal agents. One ICE agent pushes Bajan in the back, knocking Bajan into another, who grabs him. Bajan and the agent shove each other and then disengage. Then demonstrators back up and link arms to try to block the gate to stop ICE from taking the asylum seekers away. Dozens of people were arrested, but Bajan wasn't among them. Richard Barker, the acting U.S. Attorney for Eastern Washington State, had monitored the protest from his office on the other side of the Spokane River.
I went to bed that evening feeling like this situation could have been a lot worse than how it ended up.
Barker had worked for the DOJ for 11 years and focused on prosecuting drug smugglers and murderers. But the day after the Spokane protest, the Justice Department sent him and the 92 other U.S. attorneys nationwide a memo that demanded they prioritize prosecutions of ICE protesters. So Barker authorized an investigation. His staff started preparing a conspiracy indictment against Bajan Mavawala and 8 others, something Barker knew he couldn't support.
Nobody was really hurt. None of the protesters were hurt. Fortunately, none of the law enforcement officers were hurt either.
He was aware that other U.S. attorneys had been ousted for refusing to comply with Trump Justice Department orders, and he worried about his ability to act ethically if he stayed on the job. So he resigned.
I didn't feel in this case that a conspiracy charge that would carry a 6-year term of incarceration was true to who I was or who I wanted to be as a federal prosecutor.
2 days after Barker quit, his successor signed the indictment, charging Bajan and the others with conspiracy to impede or injure a federal officer, the first time conspiracy charges had been brought against ICE protesters. In a statement to the NewsHour, the DOJ said it respects the First Amendment and the right of Americans to peacefully protest, but will never tolerate the obstruction of lawful immigration operations or putting federal agents in harm's way.
Should we go in?
The day he was arrested, Bajan was getting ready to move into a new house. He and his girlfriend, Kate, bought it with a VA mortgage.
This is the service uniform. I was in 9 years.
Kate's also an Afghanistan war veteran. She deployed as a medic.
We're not weak people. We are willing to fight for what is right, which is, it's a First Amendment issue.
Bajan agrees and is standing his ground. They say that you were part of a felony conspiracy to impede or assault a federal officer.
Conspiracy requires people communicating and planning it out and saying, yeah, we're going to do this, and this is why we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it. None of that happened. At least not as far as I know. I wasn't part of any of it.
Since Bajan's arrest in July, the use of federal conspiracy charges has spread. Prosecutors have filed them against demonstrators in Chicago and also investigated Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey for the same crime.
What these people are doing to my son, and that they're doing all across the country, is unconscionable, and people need to know about it.
How y'all doing today?
Inspired by Bajan's arrest and concerned about what he sees as the misuse of government authority, his father announced in January that he was running for Congress, challenging Spokane's Republican incumbent. It was a day after federal agents fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis, and he stopped by a demonstration in Spokane.
This is me and my son in Afghanistan. He was arrested by the FBI. It's unconscionable and it's un-American.
The shock of Renee Good's killing also inspired former acting U.S. Attorney Richard Barker to speak out about what he sees as the government's hypocrisy. This is his first on-camera interview since resigning.
In the one instance, really nobody was hurt, and the protesters were charged. In another instance, somebody's life was taken, and DOJ wants to give that person immunity.
These are things that are supposed to be fundamentally American. These are the things that, when I joined the military, I thought I was joining to protect. You have a right, as an American, to voice your opinion. You can't do it violently. You can't do it in a way that harms other people. But you have a right to stand up for what you believe in.
Oh, you got it. Beijing's jury trial is scheduled for May 18th. For PBS NewsHour, I'm Aaron Glantz in Spokane, Washington.
This the city of Chicago.
Chicago police are investigating after someone targeted a Hyde Park theater with hateful vandalism. Murder Black Women was written on Definition Theater's window during the closing of a black women-led production. Leaders with the theater say they have reported it as a hate crime. Security measures were also put in place to protect cast, crew, and audience members.
Chicago indeed. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she did have a so-called birthday earlier this month. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, March 28, 2026. So I have been told. Our weekly counter-racist review. Hopefully constructive information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. *61 if you have a thought, observation, suggestion to share. 720-716-7300. The code 564943. Pound. Press *61 if you would like to participate. We should be here Tuesday, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I have been thinking about Abraham Bolden, who is still with us in his 90s, but still with us. I'd been thinking about him. They had 2025 congressional hearings about the release of JFK files. They still have thousands of files about the assassination all these years later, and so they're still talking, white people, about releasing these files. We read Abraham Bolden's book, first black member of the Secret Service. He had a lot of very important things to say about the Kennedy assassination, how it relates to white supremacy, racism, doesn't everything. And then what happened to him? Chicago as well, Abraham Bolden. I saw the first installment of these hearings, and I included some of the testimony from these hearings. James DiEugenio, Oliver Stone, there were a number of other folks who went before Congress to testify about various components. I think most of them, with the exception of one, but most of them were there to testify to various components of lies that have been told about JFK's murder, and willfully deceiving the public, even white people, about what happened with this murder, which is directly related to white supremacy, racism. Now, the first chunk of these hearings, this was in about this time. I think it was the first part of April last year. We were reading Abraham Bolden's book. Now, I had a very busy spring 2025, Don't All Victims of Racism. So we had the Seattle International Film Festival in May, and then I trotted off to Wisconsin for Sade C. Robinson's murder trial. So it was a full month. We finished the book just before leaving to go to Seattle. And other, being a victim, lots going on, but there was lots going on in that time period. days before I departed for Wisconsin, and in the middle of the festival, Abraham Bolden went to Congress. Well, he didn't go in person, but he testified. They had him via Zoom. Oh my goodness. For any of the folks, if you read Mr. Bolden's work or familiar with him independently, if you were with us, Catherine Massey Book Club, last year, Mr. Bolden, oh man. I guess when you get to 90, they say, like, hey, kind of like Mr. Fuller, you get a certain age, like, you have less of a filter and you just going to say what you're going to say. And especially you get black people. Sometimes you get black people at that age. I've heard a lot of people, they say black people, they don't want to talk about racism and I don't want to just, painful things, bad memories. I don't want to talk about it. I have seen where some black people, you get the exact opposite. They get no filter. It is total uncensored. I'm going to tell you about these crackers, that type of thing. Now, that's not too common, but oh man, Abraham Bolden in his 90s, he has still got his mental faculties. He sat there on that microphone and woo, he didn't put no censor in this. And I'm going to tell you what they said about no nigger loving Kennedy and boy, Abraham Bolden. That would have been the punctuation for us finishing the book, or even, I think it might have been right like days after we finished the book. That would have been before we transitioned to the next book. Cherry on top. You hear what Abraham Bolden said? Why? If anybody, if you know him, even if you don't know him, it is worth it. Go back to May 2025. It's on YouTube and probably C-SPAN, lots of other platforms. Abraham Bolden, May 2025. Wow. Now, there were other people who testified, and they had interesting things to say as well about all the lies that have been told. But, whew, Abraham Bolden. Anyway, we have talked about the Kennedy assassination, but right there, Abraham Bolden, and we talked about it at other times. I said while reading Mr. Bolden's memoir, I said I would have had a much more accurate understanding of Kennedy's assassination if words, what Mr. Fuller talked about all the time, even Orwell to a degree. Many times when you hear people talk about Kennedy being assassinated, they will use the term right wing. Ultra conservative, especially right wing though. They'll use that one a lot. If that were replaced with racists, white supremacists, race soldiers, they wanted to kill Kennedy. Even in fact, them white people calling Kennedy a traitor. All I need, put the R word in front of it, I overstand all of this. Race traitor. Got it. I would have had so much clarity about it. I mean, that's kind of a big one. If you can get some clarity about what are they, woo, you can get clarity about a whole lot of things. Wow, easily one of the most important events in the world last 100 years. Easily. So many things changing. So much to do with the global system of white supremacy. But that's all it. Racists, white supremacists killed Kennedy. We are thinking about global white power. And in fact, if I had anybody, they were a counter-racist student, and said, wow, you say, assassination of President Kennedy, you say you can learn so much about that global system of racism, and absolutely you can. But from just that, if you go backwards, in fact, I said it last week, Kennedy's presidency starts in January 1961. What is your welcome to the White House? Oh, yeah, we killed that troublesome Negro, Patrice Lumumba. Oh, man. Be a nigger lover if you want to. omen. Not that I think Kennedy was, I've been saying, stop saying not all white people is racist. No, I am not of the opinion Kennedy was a good white. Nope. I think Minister Malcolm X told us about that brilliantly, accurately. I'm just saying, same thing happened with the Civil War. Sometimes racists, they have arguments with other racists where I might have to kill another racist. We got disagreements about how the plantation is supposed to be run. And that's what happened. Dallas, November 22nd, 19th. Oh my God. Let me pause 1 second for Dr. Welsing. Reading is more important than watching television. We are having a white guest on Tuesday. Say, Brother Gus, tell us one thing. Say, Kennedy was killed. This is just racist who got rid of some nigger-loving president. Yep, if you wanted to boil it down to be really simple, yes, that's what happened. Could you put names on it? Yes, that's what happened. With the names. There are whole books. That's the premise. Written by white people, and that's not like a jab or critique of black people on this one, not even close. But, I mean, hey, who would have the info on this one? White people. Even though Dick Gregory, I do want to make sure I give proper acknowledgement. The Zapruder film was locked down for about 12 years after Kennedy was assassinated, which shows you can see for yourself what happened. Dick Gregory was a part of the broadcast when the public was finally shown the Zapruder film in 1975, which is kind of a historic, moment where people felt like, whoa, maybe they've been lying to us for 12 years. And the lies continue, Mr. Fuller. Predominantly run by deception. It's right there. Kennedy assassin. We can't just say that nigger-loving race soldiers killed a president that they branded a nigger lover and a race traitor, that we killed him. And no, look here, give me one thing. I said one thing that would support this. One, they got whole books that start or that talk about, that's the premise, Kennedy was killed by race soldiers. But those books, at least one of them, they start with, what does it mean to be white? Before we get to anything about JFK, what does it mean to be white? And got to explain that and give a detailed definition, which is kind of rare in textbooks. Then find out, where was JFK killed at? Dealey Plaza. Oh, that's where they lynched 3 Negroes. I'm not going to tell you I'm like no JFK assassination expert. No way. I haven't been to the National Archives. And let me see if I can find the brain and all that. I just read Abraham Bolden's book last year with you all. That book has been out for some years. I cannot say I've read every single book and lectures and went to Dealey Plaza. None of that. Just real amateurish. Something I would have had a lot more interest if from the very beginning, make it plain. Race soldiers, white supremacists killed Kennedy because they thought he was a nigger-loving race traitor. Oh, wow. Maybe I should research this. Wow. Dealey Plaza. I knew enough about all this. Where did this happen? Dealey Plaza. If you'd asked me, can you tell who is Dealey? I don't know. I'm a nigger. And I didn't grow up in Dallas. I didn't grow up in Texas. I don't have no family in Texas that I know of. Even though I have been to Dallas briefly. But I didn't even get to hang out in Dealey Plaza. So, no, I don't know no details. I didn't get to read no information and take a tour of all of this. Dealey Plaza is named after a white man, suspected racist, might be able to remove the S, who ran the newspaper, and then the Dallas Morning News, and then his family ran the newspaper. And if you look at the newspaper on the day Kennedy was assassinated, they got a big poster calling him a traitor. So you put the R of the traitor, and even when it gives the details explaining why is he wanted, why is he a traitor, that he's been encouraging race riots. They might have been talking about the March on Washington, which is just like not even 3 months before he was killed. Not even 3 months. That might, like, real talk, that might have been what they were talking about. And Birmingham, because that was the same year they killed. Anyway, what a year, 63, when he was killed. Anyway, but if people had just explained it to me that way, and then added the kicker, man, the newspaper, Dealey, that's the family that the Dallas Morning News, they had been calling Kennedy a race traitor and a nigger lover for basically the whole 2 years of his presidency. He didn't even serve one full term. They are the namesake for the amphitheater where Kennedy was killed. It's like, Roman tragedy. We're going to take Caesar out on the stage and what have you, and take him out where the very people who have insulted and upset white people who have been furious about his rantings and destabilizing global white power for 2 years. And he's assassinated in the very location where they lynched 3 Negroes. And kind of the same white power structure where they lynched 3 Negroes. I would have thought about it. They even have a monument in Dallas because it's the same spot. I think it's called the Martyrs. It's some martyr. It's like Martyrs Monument or Martyrs Post or Martyrs Plaque. And this whole, he assassinated John Kennedy and we lynched them 3 Negroes. Like, man, I have been to Dallas. If I had known all of that, I would have whined and protested just 2 hours in Dealey Plaza. An hour Dealey Plaza. Like, come on. They lynched the Negroes. Like, come on. Just an hour. Come on. Like, if I had known. Still learning. That's why I say local history too, because like, oh man, the tour, if you are a black person and you live in Dallas, the tours you could give at Dealey Plaza. Woo! They called him a race traitor and they killed him where they lynched the Negroes. And then you pull books out for all that in case they try to get wild. And come on, you have the newspaper there. Like, woo! If I had only known white supremacy. Even Fuller would say that. He said, even when you don't want it to be, that's what it's going to be. And even, in fact, they had movies from way back. Dr. Cambon, thank you. He said, oh, you casually interested in JFK? You should watch Executive Action. That is the exact theme of the film Executive Action, which I think they said it played in in the movie theater for like 2 days, disappeared. And the Dealeys at the Dallas Morning News excoriated that film. Like, what kind of nonsense and AI slop is this? Get out of here. And we already told you. And Lee Oswald did it. Tuesday, what does all this have to do with the system of white supremacy? JFK, a race traitor, Negro lover. That's why he was oh my goodness. Global system of racism. And yes, you cannot be a white person and be ignorant about racism because, hey, white people will let you know. Anyhoodles, Tuesday, we will chat up JFK and white supremacy, racism, Negro lover. Let's see. I do want to say one thing about books. I just reading a book to get a much better understanding of all of this. If a time should come, a young person, an older person, anybody, relative, stranger, anybody, someone you meet for the first time, but if it's a non-white person, victim of racism, and they ask you, ma'am, sir, I am ignorant, still learning. I'm trying to learn about the system of white supremacy racism. Are there any books you would recommend? If they say if you have 5, 10 books, 3 books, 1 book, do the best that you can to give them constructive material. I can't stress enough, accurate material. I have concluded one of the ways that white people maintain domination over non-white people, they will write books that are deliberately inaccurate, deliberately dishonest about racism, white supremacy to confuse us. Sometimes they will even order non-white people, directly, indirectly, to write books that are inaccurate about white supremacy, racism, to keep us confused so that we do not have an accurate framework, understanding for the problem we are trying to solve, at least some of us. That is massive, is massively effective, has been for some time for race soldiers. If they got to read, we'll put a lot of confusion out there so they won't really get clarity when they do attempt to read. So, non-white person victim says, hey, you got a book, 1, 2, 3. Try your best to the ability, understanding of white supremacy, racism that you have at that current moment. Try to offer the best suggestion possible. If they say, I've already read Fuller, great. Okay, we can move down other items, newer items. You can do by niche. If they say, hey, I want to, learn something about the medical field, medical apartheid. There are lots of other books. I'm just giving that one for example. They say the Kennedy assassination, Abraham Bolden. It's lots on that one too. I'm just, offering. But try to have something constructive, accurate, that, hey, this will increase your understanding. I'm not going to, if I've read a book and I already know this book is not accurate, I already know I didn't think this book was very constructive for whatever reasons, that's not going to be one of the ones that I suggest. Try to, one, even maybe think about it in advance. If you need to tell them, give me a little time so I can think on it, and then I can drop you a text or email or what have you with some titles and authors. But try to do we do not need, if a non-white person asks you for some books, it should not be, oh man, have you read 50 Shades of Grey? Oh man, have you read Iceberg Slim? Oh man, have you read Hate You Give? Like, come on, we can do way better. There are so many, constructive books. And even if you want to be specific, like if I had someone, they say, hey, I have family, relatives, connected to Louisiana, and I don't really know a whole lot about Hurricane Katrina. That's before my time. You got any books that you could recommend about that? Help me understand that, how it relates to System of White Supremacy. Gary Rivlin, Katrina After the Flood. We read that. He was a guest on the program. That sort of thing, where there's so much material. It shouldn't be difficult to have lots of different books to read, which is what we talked about yesterday. Mr. Fuller, Dr. Welsing, Gus T. recommended that, reading a wealth of nonfiction books, constructive, hopefully, accurate information about the system of racism, white supremacy, but it should be, at least let's make our best attempt to do that and not pick out the lame books that we hated and didn't think were accurate or honest. Let's not try and dump that on our brothers and sisters when they come and ask us for a literary tip. Much obliged. And still, same thing I said, make sure we are reading at least one nonfiction book per calendar year. Hey, you're already ahead of everybody else. If you can read like 2 or 3, like, woo. But being serious, being scholarly, super important. We need tons more of that, like tons more of that. That said, I hope we didn't have any victims of racism out at the No Kings protest. I certainly was not out. If you were, victims guarantee qualified, I don't have any bashing or anything about that. Just Dr. Welsing did recommend non-white people, victims of racism, and black people specifically, avoid being out where it's going to be like large numbers of people, hundreds or thousands, and some of these people might be undercover officers, undercover ICE agents. Who knows? They got cameras out and all the rest of it. Like, hey, let the white people do all of that. They can handle it. You can sit back, watch it on TV, and cheer them on or what have you, and give them a like on social media, what have you, but no way. You do not want to be out there as a victim of white supremacy. It is really dangerous, and things can go really bad really quick in those environments, and I think many of us have seen that many times at this point. They've had enough of these types of demonstrations and events over the years. But hopefully we didn't have any folks out participating in all of that. I know we did have some C.O.W.S listeners who said they just thought it was noteworthy how many people classified as white have gotten involved in these like anti-ICE protests. We heard some of that as well, and saying, wow, what is up with white people being so involved with all of this? Do they come out and jump up and down about black people? Maybe George Floyd every now and then, maybe Eric Garner every now and then, but that's not even hordes of white people even then. White people will waste time in a variety of ways, especially if they can give the false impression that not all white people are racist. And with the ICE protests, I cannot say enough, I think it would look radically different if it had not been those two white people. I'm not naming them anymore, but if it had not been those two white people who were killed earlier on, and where they talked about that and talked about that, oh my God, if that hadn't happened, I suspect it would probably be a lot less white people out jumping up and down and, oh my goodness, this is tyranny, and what is that Trump doing, and get out of here, and you can't be deporting these people, and I'm not going to be cheering no alligator Alcatraz, and all of it. I could be wrong, but I think ICE has killed other people. Those two white people are not the only folks that have been killed. I don't hear people giving a whole list where we know every single person's name is just these two white people. Anyway, the commentary audio reports that we did hear, or actually before I get to the audio report, one report that I did not share, we had a listener across the pond in the UK shared a report about white people in Europe stealing chocolate, large numbers, where they've had to take, all these preventive measures and lock chocolate. I mean, I've seen where they have expensive items, alcohol, all the spirits, they got to lock all that up because people run out with the Mad Dog 2020. But chocolate, and I mean, not Godiva, like Snicker bars, Kit Kats, just things that I would think these are not super expensive, I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but they were locking all this stuff up. You got to go get the big key and a big plastic container and all of that. And they had reports where white people, apparently they were going and stealing whole suitcases, shopping bags full of chocolate. Man, what kind of Welsing moment is this? Now, I have been playing reports and seeing reports where they have been talking about, because of climate change, it has really had a destructive impact on a lot of cocoa crops. And they've said, man, it could be by 2050, we could have a massive reduction in chocolate where it's way expensive, way less available. And they've been talking about that, increasing prices and all of that. Just temperature fluctuations are wreaking havoc on the market. Even the regions where the beans are grown might not be supportable if the weather keeps changing. That's what they've been talking about. And, white people, Dr. Welsing talked about, got to have that cup of morning Joe. And what? Can't start without my coffee. What? The Starbucks? What? Here in Seattle, man. Anyway, but they've been having tons of reports about that. And chocolate, same thing. Had reports where they were talking about coming up with synthetic chocolate because same thing. Temperature might mess up getting these beans. So, listener in the UK sent the report about the white people stealing the chocolate, and they got to take all these security measures. I checked the news today. They had a Kit Kat, what do you call? I haven't eaten them in a while, but they're like the wafer cookie type bars, and it's I guess 4 of them. They're kind of narrow. I used to love them when I was younger and just ate all kinds of craziness. But they said, this is from CBS News, 12 tons of Kit Kat bars stolen in chocolatey heist in Europe. A massive 12-ton shipment of Nestle's Crunch Kit Kat bars was stolen in a chocolatey heist that risks causing a shortage in stores right before Easter. Kit Kat, owned by Swiss food giant Nestle that was dumping sugar on all the black people on the continent of Africa, where they were accused of putting higher concentrations of sugar in the baby formula. Nestle told AFP on Saturday that a truck transporting 413,793 units of its new chocolate range has been stolen in transit in Europe. The shipment disappeared last week while heading between production and distribution locations, the company said. We always encourage people to have a break with Kit Kat, a spokesperson told AFP, referring to its famous catchphrase, but it seems thieves have taken the message too literally and made a break with more than 12 tons of our chocolate. The company said the stolen truck had left a factory in central Italy and was making its way to Poland when it was stolen, adding that the vehicle and its contents remain unaccounted for. They took the truck too? Come on. Where are the drivers at? Did they get them? What's their story? For chocolate? I didn't had a Kit Kat or 8 in my life. I never in my life thought, man, if we could get about a good ton of these Kit Kat bars, whoo, we would be living a never. I never even thought we'd get a box of Kit Kat. I'm like, what? Come on now. How many? We got cavities already and hypertension. We can sit around and eat all that. Now, if this is white people wilding like this over chocolate shortages, man, I mean, hey, it might just be that they're a little bit more unruly and grumpy on the plantation, but I had said it might be to a degree. Maybe, just maybe, non-white people victims of white supremacy world over, we focus on us, focus on doing, as Fuller said, correct eating, correct sleeping, really focusing on our health, studying white supremacy racism, who is our enemy, take care of our safety and well-being as best we can, and it might be, we might have a world with no chocolate, no coffee, no racists. And we can, do our part to see if we can accelerate all of that. But, that's just one. I know Dr. Welsing would say something about that. Does she have that whole section in the ISIS papers where she talks about chocolate? Has anybody, I was going to say one lecture, but has anybody heard 3 lectures where Dr. Welsing has mentioned chocolate related to her theory of white genetic annihilation? I know I have. Don't let me get started on Jeff Dahmer. Shout to Wisconsin 2 times. Anyway, but that was not played. The chocolate heist did happen. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe white people didn't steal all the chocolate as it was headed to Poland. How many Polish non-black people they got out in Poland and fiending for Kit Kat bars? Come on. Let's see. The reports that we heard. We started off, fascinating report. They were talking about the chat bots and them being trained to just be yes bots and be excessively flattering and, oh, you are just the bestest and coolest and greatest and, oh my gosh, I can't believe the world ever got along without you. The report that they were giving, which I thought was fascinating for lots of reasons. And they gave examples of like asking the chatbot, is it okay to litter in the park if there's no trash cans? And they said the chatbot, say that's all right. Now, I said I'm going to play it because I've had, I've been messing around on the chatbot a little bit over the last year or two, maybe a couple years. Yes, last couple years. Listeners said, man, I've heard you messing around on the chatbot and those things. They exactly what they said on the NPR report. So I said, I said, I'll do the same study that they did. I said, let's ask the chatbot. Is it all right if I litter at the park if they don't have no if they don't have no trash cans present? Is that acceptable? The chatbot said absolutely not. It did not say no. Yeah, I guess that might be all right. Let me see if I can get if I didn't pull the tab away. Let me see if I can read the exact response, because that generally has not been my experience. I know they have different bots and they behave differently, function differently. I've experienced that depending on which model you use. But man, like, I have not really functioned or had one where they just have lots of all kinds of whoopee and you're the greatest and wow. Like I said, I don't know. Anyway, so once I did the test and it did not say, yes, you can litter in the park if they don't have trash cans. In fact, it even said the law does not care whether or not they have trash cans. You are not supposed to litter at the park. I'm paraphrasing, but it did cite the law in its response. In my view, that's what I want. That is helpful. That is accurate. Now I know, like, oh, okay, I am a victim of white supremacy, privileged black male. I need to know, hey, you cannot just say, well, sir, ma'am, they didn't have no trash cans. That's all right. No, the bot already did. No, that ain't all right. You're going to get a ticket or you're going to get nigger knocked or both. That ain't going to cut it. So go on and pick your trash up, put it in your pocket. Dr. Welsing said get an A in sweeping, so pick it up, put it in your pocket, and keep it moving. That is what I want. Now, this continued because I shared that link with the bot. I said, wow, that's so interesting. They said because I was thinking, like, you don't give me no compliments or be telling me I'm cool or none of that. Like, what? I need to get the bot where they do that, where they, give out some compliments and you all right, Gus T. Don't you let nobody say you cooning and I shared that. The bot responded. I wish I hadn't scrolled off the tab because I thought it was more detailed than I was expecting. The bot responded and it said, Brother Gus, you are generally on here talking about COINTELPRO and all kinds of really detailed aspects of white supremacy racism. Do you really want me to just, oh yeah, Brother Gus, don't you think it would be more important to be accurate? That is the exact thing I was thinking. Like, man, what? Strive for accuracy. Have I not been saying that for years? That's what we need. If you can get the bot out, that's what we need. And particularly, man, some of the ways they can be helpful, you can upload files and what have you, and they can do quick scanning and do charts and all kinds of things that can be really helpful if it's accurate. We don't need no AI slop to just be making people feel good and supporting goofy viewpoints that they have taken or whatever. Like, that's not helpful at all. We don't need none of that. That's just, same thing, race soldiers. Anyway, just getting people to agree with incorrect viewpoints for whatever reason. Anyway, within all that, it reminded me one of the more constructive exchanges that I have had with the chatbot. I guess it's logged, so I could go back and see how it started. We were not talking about O.J. Simpson. We were not talking about O.J. We were talking about something else, and I think it had to do with jurisprudence. Somehow, the bot responded with the jury. It said, sometimes, like with the O.J. Simpson trial, it brought this up, the trial, there can be a climate of racial tension where the O.J. jurors, because of Rodney King, they wanted to free him as an act of vengeance for what took place years before. I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically, what it said. And particularly that phrase, climate of racial tension. I was furious. One, we were not talking about O.J. Simpson. Like, nothing related to that case, not even close. Then for it to come out and say some nonsense suggests OJ got let off because the jury, they wanted to, we gonna make amends for Rodney King. Like, what? Where did you, what, strive for accuracy? Which juror said that? Where's the evidence that you got that from? I was so evident, it's a bot, you'd be upset. I was furious. I went to the evidence, and I didn't even say nothing about no Mark Furman and Negra. Jeff Toobin, man. We sat there and read that book, Catherine Massey Book Club. Did Mark Furman get on the stand? Did he get asked? We had F. Lee Bailey as a guest on the program. Did he get asked, did you plant any evidence in this case, Mr. Furman? And he said, I'm going to take the fifth. Did that happen? Strive for accuracy. Bot's supposed to be able to go verify all that. You can get the transcript, videos, newspapers, all that. Did that happen? Yup. So does that sound like a case where the jury, they said, well, we going to make sure y'all didn't do right by Rodney, so this is what you can get. In a case where one of the lead officers gets on the stand and can't even say, nope, I ain't planting no evidence. Yeah, you right, Brother Gus. You right, Brother Gus. You right, Brother Gus. I said, wait a minute. We still ain't say nothing about Mark Furman done said Negra and didn't at any point in the discussion. That's not even relevant. And that's the same thing I said we read Toobin. That's not even relevant to this. You can just, if that means something to you, you can hang on to that. That's not even relevant. Let's get back to that search warrant since you want to talk about the glove that fit or didn't fit. Didn't they lie on the search warrant? Same thing I just said. Strive for accuracy. Bots, yeah, Brother Gus, you right. They did lie on the search warrant, and the judge excoriated them for doing so. I said, in the normal procedure, you lie on the search warrant, you supposed to lose that evidence. Hey, in some instances, they might throw out the case. You right, Brother Gus. That is what it is. We shouldn't even have had Johnny Cochran. We miss you, Johnny Cochran. We shouldn't even have had no. If it don't fit, we shouldn't even have got that far. Had to get to the grand jury. Didn't they dismiss the grand jury? All the irregularities in that case. Yeah, you right, Brother. Oh, I was you got access. I'm talking to the stupid bot. You got access to all this. What do you mean? It was a climate of racial tension that got old Juice exonerated. Are you out of your mind? Mark Furman, forget that he said, hey, did you plant evidence in this case? I'm going to plead the fifth. Who in the world is going to do it? Well, you still got to convict him now. Get out of it. Anyway, I was so mad. This ended up being like the longest conversation ever because in the course of this, the bot began pulling out all of this evidence. That's why I said we can cut through all of this about affirming and blah, blah, blah. Strive for accuracy. I didn't even know they had an FBI dump in 2024. They dropped 500 pages. That ain't 12 tons, but 500 pages from the FBI's investigation to the O.J. Simpson case. Did they find one granule of evidence that, yep, Houston stabbed up them white folks? Nope. 500 pages that you can go and download right now. 500 pages. What's in the 500 pages, Gus T? Oh, my God. Oh my. One, I even have to pause. I was kind of low-key upset. I was like really furious with the bot because the bot had this, dropped the link immediately, and dropped the links where other real people were responding to this release like, dang, they had 500 pages on, bro. I think he was still alive too when they dropped this. I have to go back to look at the dates and everything, but I was like, you knew about, or at least you had access to this, and you talk about a climate of racial tension. The FBI, the Secret Service, the LAPD, LA Sheriff's County, the Secret Service, you have the most powerful white enforcement agencies in the world focused on one Negro. And you can't get in fact, this shouldn't even have gotten beyond the grand jury. Who in the world is sitting around talking about, OJ did this? Who? Based on what? Based on what? What evidence do you have the FBI didn't get? This ain't got nothing to do with I like OJ, he my friend, and you being... Look at the evidence. The FBI looked at this and they can't find nothing. What you gonna tell me? In fact, do you know what's in that report? They said the shoes, the shoes. Oh, I could have strangled the bot once I got the report. Like, Jesus Christ. They said, we got the pictures. The Juice got these shoes. You see the bloody footprint. He done stabbed up the Brentwood butcher. That's what they said. That's what they said. FBI. The most powerful enforcement agency in the world, they say. J. Edgar Hoover. They go out, we gonna find where that nigger bought them shoes. Did they find where he bought the shoes? They tried to be non-racist, scientific. We gonna find OJ bought them shoes. The Brulo Molly shoes. Isn't that it? I'm not wealthy enough to have me a pair, but that's it. The Brulo Molly shoes. We gonna find he bought them shoes. They go out and say they're gonna be scientific. Don't mention the Juice's name. Just go out and see if you can inquire about people who bought the shoe. Maybe prominent people, well-known people, and just see, what you find. Nothing. Now they get a little bit desperate. They gotta say, well, you mention rental. See what they say. What they find. Nothing. Now we got to go back and be real. You see this nigger here? Didn't he buy the shoes? You know he bought the shoes. Check your record. You know he bought the shoes. What did they find? Nothing. We can't prove this nigger owned no shoes like this at all. Or at least we ain't got no evidence he ever bought them. Dang. I said, dang, this seemed to suggest, once again, maybe he didn't do this. Yeah, you remember. What do you mean climate of racial tension? Oh, my God. You ain't got nothing in 500 pages to tell me that we got something. We found a witness y'all didn't know about. We found that weapon that nobody could locate. We figured out the timetable for how he could do this and still get to Chicago. Nothing. The FBI vault, that's where allegedly, if enough people request a file, they'll go ahead and make it publicly available. Allegedly. I got to say allegedly because, well, Johnny Cochran's been deceased over 20 years. Is his file publicly available? No. Anyway, and even there ends up being discrepancies about, now, is this everything that's in the file? They got 500 pages on OJ. Did we get everything? Maybe they kept all the pages that, show OJ did stab up all these white people in Brentwood. Whatever. Any hoodles, all of that came from the bot being, in my view, not, at least for God, maybe if other people have that experience, well then, right on, maybe you share and I can use the bot that you all use, but it's still got to be accurate. That's the main thing strive for accuracy. That's the other thing that drives me crazy. The AI slop, when they just come out saying total nonsense, like, hey, we could check a whole lot of that. The flattery, stop with the nonsense, just be accurate. Be accurate, be accurate. That's what I've said. If you're going to try to use the chatbots constructively, which you can, man, and even I say that consistently. If I'm asking for something, let's be accurate. Links, please avoid the AI slop in the responses. And even when they give things, there should be evidence of what they're saying so we can go and verify this and not be making things up. That notwithstanding, and like I said, I don't have the experience where they just agree with everything I say. So it's pretty much, and that was my other caveat. I guess I don't have that because if you talk to them about racism because of the people who programmed the bots, oh no, they do not just agree with everything that you say about racism. And I am very sure, regardless of which bot you use or whatever you're talking to it about, that just start talking to it about racism, and I guarantee it is not going to just agree with what you say immediately. Guaranteed. Let's see. The report about the you should get that report, though. It's 500 pages. Man, that if you know any folks who are OJ did this, 500 pages. You can get them for free, no fee. Or you could read it online at your leisure. Reading more important than watching television. Let's see. The segment on the phones, there were multiple aspects where they were talking about the phones. For all of that, we have had parents on before. I do not have children. The recommendation, consistently wait as long as you can before giving your child a phone. If you want to do the dumb phone so that at least they have ability to call you or another family member if something should happen at school or safety concern or whatever, got it. But as long as you can wait, do so. And no 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds got a new iPhone and all of that. Like, come on, we can do way better. They talked about a wealth of problems with all of that, and people having eating disorders and all sorts of unrealistic body expectations and depression about their own body and what have you. I was even thinking, like, a lot of these images and what have you, is that real? We talking about the bot and everything. Like, is that real? Is this some computer generated image that you are looking at? Or even if it is a real person, has this been refined and edited? I mean, the real person doesn't even look like this. Just wait as long as you possibly can. And this same thing with the food. You have to model this behavior. The parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you cannot be on your phone just all day long, and social media and TikToking and all of that. Everywhere we go, the phone has got to be, right there. Like, come on, we can do way better. Set a good example so that your child is not tethered to their device as well. And even with those phones where they connected to eating disorders, that's something I've talked about before too, in terms of my recommendation. If you're going to have offspring, get the television out of the house. Those screens, and especially they're so massive now, man, most of the content is not constructive. Certainly when we talk about the food that's advertised, and even just, the food that whatever programs and such, your shows that you watch on Netflix or YouTube or wherever, most of the time the food that the people are eating in the shows is not healthy. Pizza and chicken wings and all the rest of it, ice cream and whatever else, that is not healthy. Potato chips, real common. So I can grasp. And we're not even counting all the commercials. I think they have studies where they've talked about how YouTube and a lot of those platforms, especially ones where they have content for younger children, a lot of that stuff is just littered with advertisements and or product placements for Lunchables and Chips Ahoy and all kinds of just really unhealthy foods that will get you addicted, and even setting your palate for life so that you'll want to eat all that unhealthy sugary snacks and tater chips and all that garbage, so that we will not have the vitality to replace white supremacy with justice. Very common. Really important. You have those offspring, we talked about that, not letting your child veg out in front of their phone, in front of the screen. It is setting them up for really destructive consequences for their life, behavior patterns for their life. And they even talked about the getting addicted to being on those phones, driving addictive eating habits. Now, that's even one I had not heard before, where they're saying that for young people, that if they do not have access to that phone, I don't know if that's because of the school ban or maybe parents have some rules or whatever, but if they don't have access to it, it drives all of that anxious eating where they're not even necessarily hungry, but just, to try to calm my nerves about not being able to go and check and see, I posted this and see what. Man, wait as long as you can. That's white people. That's why those lawsuits and such, that was also in the news this week, where they are being held accountable, I guess, to a degree, about engineering these platforms to get children all addicted and stuck on them. Wait as long as you can and try to model correct behavior yourself for your offspring and other little people that you are around. The segment, they had President Lula in Brazil. We have studied that area, important, lots of black people down there. President Lula commenting that he thinks that global powers, without mentioning Trump, I don't think he called names, which I think some might support, but he said an effort from global powers to return to a colonial form of rule. Wow. And I think Lula might be a non-white person. I am not sure. Lots of confusion about racial classification in Brazil for non-white people. White people are not confused. But he is president there. He could be a non-white person. I do know Brazil is a part of the so-called BRICS nations. I think that's supposed to be like Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, Iran is on there. Like, seems a lot of places where you got a lot of dark people. Like, we got to keep an eye. Might have to go smack them around, do something about them. But Brazil is on. I think that might be the first letter in the BRICS folks that we got to keep an eye. Might have to go hit them with some bricks or drones or both. But one, we are under a global system of white supremacy already. In terms of colonial rule, we already have it. Now, if he means a more refined, or a more direct form of white rule over these areas, maybe. They're talking about all these military interventions and going and snatching Maduro and that sort of thing. Maybe. It might not, we're not going to do it indirectly and just be from afar and manipulate the currency and that sort of thing and steal resources. No, now we're going to be a little bit more direct and so-called boots on the ground and how we dominate these non-white people in regions. Maybe. But we are already under a system of white supremacy racism. So it would just be, I think even Dr. Welsing talked about how the system just recycles from establishment, maintenance, refinement, and we just go back and start all the way back over and do the establishment again. Let's see. The report on the situation. Oh, and I do want to say I have many people, white, non-white, calling the situation in Iran the war in the Middle East, so-called. I am not calling this war. I'm using the same logic that Neely Fuller Jr. put forward, that the war on this planet is the system of white supremacy racism, and that everything else, what happened in Vietnam, that they killed that race traitor Kennedy for, these are conflicts. So the situation in Iran, the conflict, because again, racism, white supremacy, this is constant, ongoing war. Dr. Welsing said that for you to have a minority of people dominate 90% of the planet and take all the chocolate to boot, It has got to be perpetual warfare, which is what white supremacy racism is. The conflict in Iran, totally disrupting petroleum fuel usage, pricage all over the world. That, again, illustration of if you are a non-white person, you try to have a business, or even if you don't have a business but just have a good job, racists, it does not take a whole lot, and they can totally ruin everything. We talked about the impact on non-white people who drive for their career, and then talking about so-called places like Cuba. Man, I played a report from the BBC where they were talking about what's happening in Cuba. They have separate reports. There was a report that I watched, video, from Indian public broadcasting. They had video footage. Oh my God, it looked like you could get ran over by a car so easily down there, because I mean it is pitch black, like no street lights, no nothing, like super dangerous just because it's so dark. And then, like they said, can you buy groceries for a day, for a week? Man, and they have lots of dark people. And when I watched that video, that's what I was looking for. Like, let me see. I saw a lot of people who look like that might be Assata's cousin. That might be Assata's nephew. They said the folks out in the rural areas, non-white people, black Cubans, they really caught it. And in fact, I was going to share that video. India Public Broadcasting is about 10 minutes. They showed one section, it's like they were showing different neighborhoods in Cuba that were impacted by these power outages, and sometimes they last for like 24 hours. Man, they went to one neighborhood, it looked like they were in Detroit, Oakland. It was just tons of black people. I'm sure they hablo español, but man, they black people. And I mean, it's black Cubans there. Assata went there for a reason. It's non-white people there, black people there. Those are the folks who are really suffering in Cuba right now with the embargo and President Trump and them told, hey, pluck it, take it whenever we want to. Man, imagine especially being in like a Caribbean climate, and you don't have no electricity for 1, 2, 3 days out of a week. Global system of white supremacy. The report where they talked about in Canada, the Entropy outlet where they are aiding race soldiers in where they, I guess, get kicked off other platforms and they can't monetize their acts of white terrorism, where they can go on Entropy and some of these other outlets and they say, hey, we just gonna make our money, get our check from all this, and snicker about it. I've heard lots of that. I think some of that is why they're having a suit in Buffalo. Peyton Gendron, race soldier, being on some of these services, Discord and the like, where they can either share tips on how to terrorize and dominate non-white people, and or make money so we can go out and further engage in terrorist activities. That way we can go out and get some more ammunition, guns, body armor, all of the above, computers, all of that. I am not surprised by any of this. I suspect white people will vote very slowly, if they do anything at all, about white people being on these services. I know myself, hey, we were booted off of our first platform. The first 2 platforms that the C.O.W.S was on, we were booted off immediately. We didn't even have anything monetized or no links or anything like that. And we were not talking about go out and kill whitey. We were not reading no excerpts from the Anarchist Cookbook and talking about committing no crimes and we're going to defraud the government and don't pay your tax. None of that. None of that. They got us off. I think the first time we were on the air, they got us off the University of Washington in like 3 months. You're telling me suspected racists? They're going out talking about, as a matter of fact, they said they were talking about posting content of them going out and terrorizing neighborhoods and getting in violent fights and brawls and all of this, and then we can put that up as more exhilarating content. What? Come on, man. Like, white people are not serious about replacing white supremacy with justice at all. And you see, global system, because this is race soldier hooliganism. They started up in Canada and the Fifth Estate. This is a documentary, so you can watch all this. Fifth Estate, that's where I saw the report about the privileged black boys in Canada that are being kidnapped and enticed to go sell drugs all over the continent up there. But you can watch Fifth Estate. That's on YouTube if you're interested in seeing this report to see how these white terrorist groups are using these platforms to make money to fund them going out and engaging in more terrorism. Interestingly, one of the platforms that they mentioned, the GDL, that's one where they talked about doing these intimidation tours, and they were down in Nashville. They said that they had pulled in one of the shooters who in Nashville had a school shooting, killed one person, shot themselves as well. I said, whoa, what? And I looked at Solomon Henderson, and I was like, oh, I think I remember that one. They said that guy, Solomon Henderson, black male, he had a diary, manifesto, whatever you want to call it, filled with all this white supremacist ideology and worshiping mass shooters and school shooters. Heard all that before, but black person, they said he had all of this self-hate, wishing he was white, apparently even images where he had put white makeup on his face. This is young Solomon Henderson, black male who allegedly engaged in this school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. But he had put white all over his face and asked, do I look white now? And then had engaged in all of this, I don't like being black, and I wish I was white, and I don't ever hear anything good about black people, and whatever, you can call me a coon, and just all of the most anti-black, self-hating rhetoric that you would see on these platforms, where I suspect that's how the people on these platforms talked to him. And if he felt in any way depressed, vulnerable, this is a young teenager, he's in school, so if he had any sort of mental health issues at all, and he's just hanging out on these platforms all day long and just feeling bad about himself and hating being classified as black, victim of white supremacy, Dr. Welsing said, we do not qualify for mental health. Even reminded me of the situation at Virginia Tech. We had a non-white shooter there too. But man, I mean, it was so graphic, the anti-black content of it all. And he committed suicide, Solomon Henderson, in Tennessee. Terrible. But I mean, if anything, that would be another one now. Why is it let's wait as long as possible? Let's really be mindful about what websites. This is a young teenager. What websites your child is on, what sort of material they're looking at, if they're talking to people online, because that could have been the case with Mr. Henderson. What people are they talking to? Be super curious. That is your job as a parent. We talked about all that with Columbine, but man, that is, and it's even, I remembered that case. I just didn't remember that the manifesto part of it, or I guess maybe I could have forgot those details, but wow, I wanted to see, maybe because they said it's kind of lengthy with some details, but to download to see more material, man, that would be age appropriate. I don't know if I would talk to or I would not talk to an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old about that, but a 17-year-old, oh yeah, because he shot up the high school and all that. Yes, 16-year-old, unfortunately, yes. Age appropriate language, absolutely. But I mean, hey, this is something that you're going to have to do the Columbine drill at your school. We might as well go ahead and talk about it. Any hoodles, last tidbit from the segments that, or I guess two. One, I will get in. They talked about arresting the anti-ICE protesters, and that right here in Spokane, Washington. Now, I mean, that's not exactly my neighborhood. That is on the opposite side of the state, Eastern Washington, as they say, but still. And the No Kings protest, that's about the same thing, same sentiment, right? ICE people got to get out here and all that. I would not be out in any of that. And exactly for what they talked about in that segment, the anti-ICE protest, so-called. Now, you could just take what they said, take the exact record that was presented. We're going to go out. This is wrong. These people, they have lawfully entered and asked for sanctuary and are going through the steps. They haven't, done anything illegal, and they're not supposed to be deported and harassed. Okay, all well and good. We're going to go out and yell and get into it with these ICE agents, get into a kerfuffle where we're pushing back and forth. Hey, if this had been all black people, you already know, obstruction of justice, they're going to have us in, I don't know what the goofy West Coast equivalent of Alcatraz is, but we're going to be detained. Had said before, shouldn't be calling it that, should be calling them concentration camps. That's what it would be. We're going to be concentrated immediately. It probably wouldn't even have taken we got to get into, some sort of shoving match, and, he pushed me and I pushed him back and we got into a yelling match, and I'm like, whoa. I would already, man, just me being here, even if I didn't do no pushing, I didn't do no shoving, I had my sign and I was yelling the protest chants that we had agreed to in advance, and now I'm the one facing some sort of charges of insurrection or who knows, could just being out here. That's exactly, amongst many other reasons, but that's why Dr. Welsing said, oh no, we, victims of white supremacy, especially if you're classified as black, we do not need to be out there at all for none of, even if you agree. I don't think the ICE people should be here. They've said repeatedly, you're practicing racism, you're just going around looking for non-white people to round up. Sometimes you don't care if the people are here legally, illegally, whatever. We're just looking for dark people. Practicing racism. Great. I'm not going out and doing no protesting and jumping up and down in the street. White people can do all of that. Let them have it. Something listener said something about that is kind of suspicious anyway. White people wanting to go roll around the street and get into brawls. White people do a lot of that too, where because they are white, they know it's going to be way different for me as a white man, white woman. I can go out here and woof in these agents' face and pull out my camera and all that. For the most part, they're not going to treat me the way that they're going to treat these dark people. That's why they said that some of the white people said that they were going out and trying to lure ICE agents by putting like so-called Mexican paraphernalia on their cars, so they would think of some non-white people who are here illegally and chase them. They know that's why I think so many of them were outraged about the two white people who were killed by the ICE agents. Like, you're not supposed to treat a white person that way. That's what you do to these old dark people, George Floyd and all of them, that's what you do to them. Philando Castile, that's what you do to them. You don't treat white people that way. But yeah, you let them do all of that. I'm not going out to do no Kings protest, mess around and they have drones or cameras and facial recognition technology, and then you come back days or weeks later and find out I'm going to get charged for whatever, destruction of property or whatever else. Let the white people do all of that. And any event where it's going to be a lot of white people, any event like that where it's going to be out in public and yelling and protesting or whatever, I'm already not interested. If it was already non-white people, if it was all non-white people, I wouldn't endorse that either. But if it's going to be like a good number of white people, and that could even just be one, but it's going to be white people involved too, nah, I'm good. I'll watch it on TV, I'll give my likes, and I'm sure y'all can handle it without me. The last report, which related, the last report from Chicago, they had the sign posted on the theater, Definition Theater, where they just had the play of black female production, and it said in big, all capital letters on the front door of the establishment, murder black women. Now, I think this is important that this happened in Chicago, or I will clarify, it may not have been on the door, but it was on the front window. Same thing, basically, but right on the front of the establishment. This is in Chicago. We just had the report from like a week ago. It was earlier this month, March 2026, where some race soldier had been out terrorizing black females. They were just like standing at the bus stop, yelling, cursing at them, assaulted one, and he went and terrorized a number of black females. We talked about this because one young lady, she was upset that no one intervened, and we talked about all that. But this just happened like days ago, literally, in the exact same city, and then to have this posted. Like, man, for the folks at the theater, I guess, hopefully they have security, and the police are supposed to be investigating. Hopefully they have cameras so they can catch, like, exactly who did this. Maybe the people, you know, who live in the same area or other businesses, they have cameras too, so they can get exactly who did this. Hate crimes, all of that, lock them up for decades and all of that. But if I had, like, daughters, nieces, cousins, sisters, especially, you know, if they were in that area, if they worked in that area, throughout the city, period. This is, you know, the land of Dr. Welsing, Lauren Questlove, Chicago, Abraham Bolden. I would definitely share both of these reports, this one and the one from the black females being attacked before. Be vigilant about your area, who is around. If you see anybody, particularly if you see some white person, but I would be vigilant about everyone, but just alert, eyes up. If anything looks odd, strange, peculiar, better safe than sorry. Already have your numbers down in advance, who you want to call. If it, you know, you're out and about and something happens, bam, this person I can call, get me a ride ASAP. I'll go to a safe location and wait until they can get here and blah, blah, blah. But I would let them know, like, wow, that is like 2 very serious incidents within a very short period of time. And I mean, murder black women, like, man, I would take that super serious. And like I said, it's just on the heels of this, these black females. This was not just he called them nigger or whatever and ran off. Like, he was stalking, threatening. There was, I think the previous white person who was doing all that, I think he might have been armed, because it seemed like he was trying to instigate and get some of the black people to respond, so then he could have, you know, escalated and did whatever. But I would share that with black females in the area, just so that they can be alert about their surroundings, make sure that they're pairing up, especially at nighttime. I would not want to be out and about, even if it's something small, walk into the corner store, what have you, because a number of the black females that were assaulted before, they weren't going super duper far, you know. They were just standing out on the corner, what have you, and they weren't even by themselves sometimes, and they still got assaulted and terrorized. I think one young lady, she had her child in the car. So, yeah, I would share both of those reports and make sure, you know, kind of go over a safety plan if they want to take a self-defense course, firearm training, anything else that you think would be helpful for your safety. Like I said, have your numbers all ready to go. And evasive action. I'm such a big fan. If you're in your vehicle out and about and it looks like something is untoward, go to the most populated place you can. Call the police. Hopefully you can get descriptive information, but I'm a big advocate of not doing the video and, ooh, I'm going to record you. I wouldn't encourage that at all, because the person might be unstable or they just want to commit an act of violence and run. So get to a public place, contact the police, and then other people that, you know, will be there for your safety and make sure you're okay. But do not engage. Be alert and evasive. That would be my recommendation, and just paying attention to things like that when you see an increase in behavior like this in your area, so you can alert others and make quality decisions, safe decisions, so you can, you know, avoid as much terrorism and abuse as we can given the circumstances we are in. That's it. Let's see if folks, if they spectating or if they have anything they would like to share. Let's see, and then reminder, so we will be here on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, white guest only. We will chat it up. As I said, I would have learned so much more, and I would have been focused. I would have read a little bit, studied a little bit. Words are Neely Fuller Jr. I could at least give him kudos if they had not I don't even use right wing. Like, I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to get the word guide to even see if that word is in there. Right winger, because sometimes they'll say that too. Right winger. We got these old right wingers, man. They didn't want Kennedy to, mess the Vietnam funding up and all that old nonsense. If they had forget right winger, racist. Oh. Light would have clicked on a long time ago. Can I give one more shout out to Dick Gregory? Because I do. Even the bot, this is one where the bot did not do no AI slop and was super logical, I thought. I just told you, two-time Cows guest, Dick Gregory, who was not no fan of Gus or the Cows, which is pretty standard, but he was on the show, which was Geraldo. I'm saying it was Geraldo. I guess give him his kudos too. He was on Geraldo, 1975, the first time the Zapruder film was shown to the public. It was sat, even you can think about that. It was sat on for 12 years. The president is killed. There's video of this, and it is not shown for 12 years. When it's finally shown, Dick Gregory is front and center. And they're asking him questions like, man, how did you first get involved in all that? And I had even more respect, and I said, man, that's two misses. Now, I don't know if it would have went any different, but I would have, and this is even bizarre, I would have much rather not spoken about his biography, Dick Gregory, because that's what we talked about during his first visit. I would not have talked about that at all. It would have been racists killed JFK, his involvement with that, and then Jonestown. Those would have been, and again, those two events are related. But that's what we would have talked about the first time, and then the second time we could have stuck to James Byrd Jr. and death penalty, Texas death penalty, and everything goes back to Texas. We would have talked about that the second time. But the great Dick Gregory, the bot even acknowledged that for black people, there was zero incentive to investigate JFK, even if he was a Negro lover, and that's why he got killed. So what? There was no incentive to investigate that case at all. Exhibit A, Abraham Bolden. We did read his memoir, but beyond all of that, if that's what they did to a white man out in public for being a so-called Negro lover, what are they going to do to me if I try and speak up and say, look what they did to that Negro lover? I ain't going to have nothing. And you see what they did to Brother Bolden? I said, you right on that one. That's right. That's right. Ain't gonna be no incentive to that. And then even you could add, that's why Minister Malcolm got booted out of the Nation of Islam. It even gave me pause like, wow, was that a COINTELPRO act? Huh. They had infiltrated the NOI, right? Maybe that was the directive. You didn't say all that about Kennedy accurately. Get out of here. It just gave me pause. Anyway, let's see. Retired firefighter in Florida. Do you have commentary to share? Should be with us, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I heard a report this week that I thought was interesting. It was, I'm pretty sure you know about it. It was in Africa, the continent of Africa. The person that was doing the report was representing a representative from Ghana. And apparently some Africans took a poll and on what was the worst. I'm trying to think of how to state what they were talking about. The worst act ever in the history of the world, I guess, that took place in the world, and they identified it as human trafficking and the transatlantic slave trade of Africans as being the number one crime ever committed by people on the planet Earth. And I thought about it, trying to practice logic. At the same time, I say VGQ towards the report and the poll that took place. It was three areas on the earth that stated that was not true. I can only remember two of them: the United States and Australia. It was another area that was identified as that was not the worst thing that ever happened. They didn't agree with it, that sort of thing. But based on logic, I would say the worst thing that ever took place amongst people on planet Earth is still existing as you and I are talking to one another right now, and that's the global system of racism, white supremacy. But VGQ on their analysis, as far as they're concerned, from my standpoint, attempting to use logic, those incidents that they mentioned actually are symptoms of the worst crime. There were a lot of people on the planet Earth that was practicing those crimes other than white people that they were talking about. But anyway, and Mr. Fuller mentions in the word guide crime at least about 3 or 4 times. And the one that I thought that was most interesting is short enough for me to read, I think. It says, there is no combination of speech and or action among the people of the known universe that is greater than the crime of racism, white supremacy, and promoting falsehood, non-justice, and incorrectness. And that was good enough for me as far as logic is concerned. And that's my report for this week. Thanks for listening.
Much obliged, retired firefighter. I had not seen the Ghanaian poll about the worst crime. I do see it now, though. That is interesting that I guess Australia, they were one of the regions where they did not agree with this. Reminded Mr. Fuller would talk about how the so-called continent of Australia, that white people got there, they were booted out of Europe, literally. That white people said, you're so awful. They were prisoners. You're so awful. We don't even want you to be here in prisons. Like, get out of here. And they sent them to the other side of the world, to Australia. And they were so awful, they got there and immediately terrorized and killed all of the non-white people. So I guess I wouldn't agree either. Like, man, you try and make us look bad, what we've done and everything. So, no, we're not going to agree with that at all. We stand with our white U.S. brothers, the Yanks, that no, we do not agree, and that you Africans are crazy. The U.S. as well, I guess you could say the same thing. British cast-offs, and they were involved in the crime. So, yeah, we're not going to agree with that either. Words are important. The system of white supremacy ongoing, that's just, I just think the slavery that they're talking about, that's just an earlier phase of the system of white supremacy racism. And I mean, hey, if you got the current president of Brazil saying that, hey, we got to watch out, and some of the same regions, well, he didn't call names, but some of the same regions, powerful white people, they are looking to return to colonial rule. How far have we really gotten? And As I said, we already got colonial rule. That system of white supremacy racism. If they're talking about, I guess, putting us back in the chains and being more direct about it, dang. We ain't even made no progress at all. But much obliged. Words are important. I certainly don't have no gripe if they want to say that's the worst crime ever. VGQ as well. Hopefully we'll just get back to replacing white supremacy with justice, which, my view, all one and the same. The worst crime, greatest crime, and it's still ongoing. I will say that even related to that segment that we heard at the end, the black officials seeking office in Indiana, Boone County, Indiana. I did mention Jonestown, where they said they had received all these racist threats. One of my favorites, it was mentioned in that segment, they said it is 2026 and we are going through all of this. People are sending racist messages like this. I cannot believe this is happening in 2026. No disrespect to any of the elected officials. Hopefully they win. Everybody who is running for office, hopefully Claudette Peterson, Monica White, hopefully they'll all win their races and, serve long terms, have great careers. But system of, that's why I said it's really one and the same, whether it's the plantation or it's one and the same. We have to replace the system of white supremacy with justice, and that's why I said making sure that we all have an accurate understanding of that, so that fewer non-white people say that it's not surprising or stunning in any era for white people to practice racism, white supremacy. What does it mean to be white? Now, if anything, if you want to say, hey, it's 2026 and I can't believe that we have not completed our assignment to produce justice, hey, that's way different. That's not what she said. That's a little different. Hey, let's get on our job. Darn tootin'. Let's get on our job. But yeah, it should not be we, victims of racism. We should not be saying or thinking, man, it is 2026 and you still got white people practicing racism. Well, that's what they do. 3,036, 5,056. That's what they do. Any hoodles. Make sure I did not miss any, folks. We will be here on Tuesday. I cannot wait. System of White Supremacy assassinated JFK and put exact names on it. Oh, that's one I'm thankful I do not have regrets. And did talk to Neely Fuller Jr., did talk to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing about the JFK assassination. Thank you. I would have kicked myself. And Dr. Cambon, because he's the one that told me about the film Executive Action, as I said, which was buried for many, many years. And that's right in the middle of that film, them saying, why do race soldiers have to kill Kennedy? Vietnam, Negroes here, Dr. King, World White Order. He's messing things up. Nigger lovers gotta go. They almost say it verbatim that way, right smack dab in the middle of the film as they're sitting calmly, cool, methodical, planning to kill this Negro lover. Indeed, I cannot say that enough. Retired firefighter. He's not a teeny bopper. Did you know? Now, he's in Florida, so he's not in Texas, so it's no shame here. I didn't know. No judgment. I'm just curious. But did you know that they lynched 3 privileged black males in Dealey Plaza about 60 years before they killed JFK in the same spot?
I sure didn't.
I didn't either.
Sure didn't.
Still learning. But that's coming up on Tuesday. I haven't been to Dallas in a minute, and I didn't get to go to visit Dealey Plaza when I was there. But the book that I'm reading, our guest for Tuesday, he said they got a plaque there. It's either Martyrs Plaque, Martyrs Monument, or something in the park right there. But it literally says the assassination of John F. Kennedy and them 3 privileged niggers that we lynched. Like, again, if I had known that way back then, I would have had a drastically different understanding of the Kennedy assassination. Even that, like, are you saying that you think they directly coordinated his assassination to be right there in the same spot where they lynched them 3 niggers? Yes.
I've actually been in Dealey Plaza at least 3-4 times. When I was in college, we would play against Bishop College. It still existed at the time, and I visited by myself, in particular to study the assassination, and I took my offspring the last time I went, and I didn't know anything about what you just brought up about black people being lynched in that area.
Many lies have been told. And I too, now I'm not I already acknowledged, I ain't no JFK sleuth, nothing like that, I'm not saying that. Just I had, in an amateurish way, emphasis on amateur, studied a little bit about the assassination, even though I'd said before I'd been to Dallas, but I just didn't get to go to Dealey Plaza or any of the, museums or anything associated with JFK in Dallas. But I had visited briefly. But man, they have whole books that examine white supremacy, racism, and the assassination of JFK in Dallas, Texas, and the racism around the racism around the visit, the racism around the geography of where that happened at, why it's named Dealey Plaza. Oh my gosh. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We will get to it. But man, if I had known, and that's just our guess for Tuesday, but there are multiple books, all written by white people, unless I am mistaken. But that's as it should be, as I said, as it should be, not a diss. But multiple books that framed the assassination of John Kennedy. This is an act of racism, even though a suspected racist was killed for sure. But this is racist saying, you are a race traitor. You are not doing what you are supposed to do as a white man. You are destabilizing global white power. You're out of here. There are multiple books. And yes, that's what happened. But then specifically about the Dallas component of, now, why did this happen specifically in Dallas? And people in Dallas specifically who are rooting this on and maybe even a part of the planning structure of all of this happening. Why could this happen in Dealey Plaza? Oh, it is, the books, plural. Oh, it is amazing. Even bears repeating. Our guest for Tuesday book is about the history and context of white supremacy, racism in Texas, including the Kennedy assassination. How does that book start again? Before you get to JFK being killed, he got to tell you in detail, what does it mean to be white? Woo, man. Wish I had had that thinking way earlier. I would have made so much more progress, and I would have demanded we're going to spend an extra hour in Dallas. If I have to catch a plane, walk, hitchhike, swim, hang out here for a few months, whatever, I'm going to hang out in Dallas for a minute. And I would have went to Dealey Plaza. I could have been like retired firefighter. Went to Dealey Plaza, went to the museum up on the 6th floor, seeing what tacky trinkets they got, went and looked out the window and all of that. Got to archives, went to the university because they have all kinds of goodies that you can go and study about all of this down there. But you don't have to get to Dallas. That's, if you live in the Texas region, maybe you can make that a part of your local counter-racism study. Oh, my God. White people, and it's so much I can even add to it because there's so much detail. If you haven't read Abraham Bolden's book, you should definitely read that because he talks about the racism of it as well. But, man, that is one. You could just go and look. Dealey Plaza. Go look at the Dealey's newspaper for 1963. You can start that summer. Like, just go look at the newspaper and see what they had to say about black people. Matter of fact, start from August. March on Washington. Dallas Morning News. Start from maybe the beginning of August, because then you'll be able to see what they had to say about the March on Washington and the president, and then you can just watch. Oh, and then that's the way to do it. Start from August 1963 and just go forward through the assassination and just see what they say in the paper. Like, oh my God, you'll walk through the March on Washington, you'll walk through the bombing of the Birmingham church in September, and what you would think would be a downtime of a month, but it is not, because Kennedy was threatened in Chicago and Florida in that time period. So you can look and see if anything is mentioned about that in the newspaper, and then you can see what are they saying about Kennedy's coming visit in the paper. How many times does he get called a race traitor? How many times did they connect him to the March on Washington and niggers acting a fool? It is amazing. They even have white people that were doing radio programs at the time, same thing, calling him a race traitor and a nigger lover and all of, oh my God. They sounded just like the January 6 people. They sound exactly like the January 6 people. Exact same thing. And some of the January 6 people, they were Texans. We talked about that before. Came from Harris County and everything. Devontae, still not forgotten. But that will be Tuesday. More to come. JFK, they assassinated a president. The global system of white supremacy, Vietnam, local Negroes. I mean, oh my goodness. Global white power. Global white, even a teaspoon of that for reals. The prosecution in Belgium, that 93-year-old white diplomat, they say participated in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. That is this. Same thing, same people. Anyway, we will do it up on Tuesday. JFK. Might even be able to double dip, as they say, because there are multiple books written on this subject matter. Kudos to retired firefighter. That's exactly what I said. Encouraged having, it could be family research projects. It could be individual, where it's just, hey, it's just me and nobody else is interested. No problem. I can go do my studies, research, post online, keep it to myself, do a little bit of both, whatever. Certainly, you have a care mate, offspring. Oh my goodness. This can be our research project. We can go and read things together, study things together, be a lifetime thing. A new book comes out, a new film comes out, we watch it together and talk about it, eat something constructive. That is spectacular. You said they went to go study JFK together, and that is amazing. See, and then it can be here's some new information about JFK. Oh man, look what I found. We can go read this, boom, 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 then we can talk about that. Or Dad finds something. Look what I found, blah, blah, blah. And maybe even gets passed on. He has his own, offspring, and they study. They have the records release, and, spend a little time and see if they have any cool information in the records and spark my interest, maybe find a new book or what have you. But learning constructive information, we need lots more of that. That will help us, I think, solve this problem using our brain computer constructively, not just sitting around watching TV. That's it. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. You'll see the links for PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo, as well as our link for Amazon, the wish list under Gus T. Renegade. Enormous gratitude for all of the folks who have invested, nabbed an item or 3. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy. If I can say quickly, we are about half, or maybe a little bit more than halfway through Dr. Colin Anthony Beckles' dissertation, Pan-African Sites of Resistance about Black Bookstores and Racism. Dr. Welsing has been mentioned twice in the dissertation. Not in detail as of yet, although I did think it was interesting. It took a moment for me to even ponder on it. They mentioned Dr. Welsing, her lectures being played at Jamaican bookstores. Now, she will be mentioned again in this textbook. Neely Fuller Jr. is in here too, as it should be for an accurate, serious, scholarly study of black bookstores in the world, apparently. She will be mentioned correctly, I think, third time around. And when I say correctly, I mean it won't just be Dr. Welsing, they had some of her books and they're moving on really quick. Or like this past week, they played Dr. Welsing speeches, blah, 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 which, like I said, it was important, but it's going to be, we went to the bookstore to get the ISIS papers. This is why we went, that type of thing where you get some of and getting to hear black people talking about how Dr. Welsing's scholarship impacted them and brought them to the bookstore. That's what I'm looking forward to. And that'll be third time around. Dr. Welsing comes up in the dissertation on racism and the efforts at black bookstores in the world. For sure. And apropos, we are reading this in the month that would be her so-called birthday. Again, this is one that I do have lots of regrets, and I said this yesterday. This dissertation was published 30 years ago. If Gus T had gotten off of his lazy hind parts even 15 years ago, I could have read this whole thing, asked Dr. Welsing about it in great detail. Does she remember this? Did she get to read this project? Does she remember some of these bookstores? Can she talk about the significance of black bookstores? That would have been so important to add to this study. We could have easily accomplished that. We need more researchers and serious scholars. And even they were talking about the anti-ICE protests in eastern Washington. Dr. Colin Anthony Beckles, the late great, he did his scholarship teaching out in eastern Washington. In fact, that's where he committed suicide. Victims of white supremacy do not qualify for mental health. Sobriety would be best. Under conditions of white supremacy, we need high-functioning brain computers to be on our assignment, taking their offspring to do some research projects and to do some high-level thinking to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Creator, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Hey, Gus T saying white people said JFK is a Negro lover, and that's why we had to blow his brains all over Dallas's streets. Even still, he ain't no good white man, meaning not racist. Are you serious? What does it mean to be white? Stop name-calling people classified as black. Said that yesterday during the book club, because apparently they do that at black bookstores all over the world. They name-call black people. Fuller's book is there, hopefully, so hopefully we got better on that. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.